crowded up. If besides, if they get mad, start flinging, everything around, I don't want to do that.
You don't want to be in the fire.
I don't want to be in the mix.
Catch you with
Good evening and welcome to the May 19th meeting of the Wasatch Groves County Council. If I could encourage you to either turn off your phones or turn them to silent, please. And if we could have the roll call.
Mr. Mayor Brown,
Here.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Here.
Councilman Dolzeny,
Here.
Councilman Liang,
Here.
Councilman Rocket.
Here. If you would stand for the pledge, remain standing for the invocation. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, again, we ask for wisdom and guidance, civility. Let us have a great meeting tonight. We thank you for the opportunity to represent the residents of Waxahachie Groves and the landowners. We pray for those that are serving our country. Keep them safe, and we pray these things in your name. Amen. If there are no changes to the agenda, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Make a motion to accept the agenda.
Okay, make a motion by Jim, second.
Second.
Second by Ron, discussion by council. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign, passes 5-0. Moving to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the cancellation of the June 2nd meeting out of the consent agenda and discuss it immediately following the consent agenda.
Okay. All right, so we're going to remove that part. All right, with the rest of the consent agenda.
Yeah, make a motion to approve the consent agenda with that item removed.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the consent agenda with one item moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion by Jim, second by Ryan. All right, moving to that consideration for the June 2nd meeting. Jim?
I guess I'm surprised that we've been asked to change June 2nd meeting tonight when it's a scheduled normal meeting, and I don't know why we schedule education or training when we had a scheduled council meeting. So I guess I'm trying to understand, Bill, why we've done all these things and not worked around our schedule of the council meetings.
Unfortunately, Councilman, Mayor, the issue is I don't get to pick the schedule of when the training occurs, and I don't get to pick the items that the council wants staff to be certified and registered in. This particular course, this is when it's offered. There's no other opportunity to go to it.
Going once a year?
Once a year?
And you can't make the meeting personally on 6/2?
Not from Philadelphia? No, I don't think so.
You're going to be there as long as the entire staff?
Not the entire staff. You're more than welcome to have at least one of the staff members here.
And my question, I guess, is who would we have if we did not have you? Who would we have available for that meeting?
If you're looking for a manager, the town does not have depth and breadth of staffing to afford an assistant town manager. You have just a very few number of people, and unfortunately, training occurs when it occurs. I have to go to that training as a requirement that the town has.
Will we have the opportunity for town clerk to be here, or she's also out of town?
The clerk could be here.
I don't know, maybe we ought to try having a meeting without your attendance and just abbreviate it, because I'm really concerned that we said, here we are tonight, you've already made the plans, so it's not like you really need us to say it's okay, but you made the plans beforehand. And I would expect that you would have come to us a long time ago and said, can we do something else? And then the question becomes, if we cancel the 2nd, can we do it on another day? So we can get our business done.
It could be done another day. The council has plenty of latitude to cancel, move, modify, change dates and/or times. So the real issue is, yes, you could go to the 4th, the 5th, you could do a Saturday. I'm not opposed to that. I know that this was not done prior to the last meeting. Otherwise, I would have told you at the last meeting that all these items have been purchased and underway.
I guess we're putting a rock in a hard place and kind of can't keep you here because you've got commitments and so on, so. We have to cancel the meeting, I presume, but I wonder if there's something that maybe the council come up with an alternative. We can have 2 meetings this month coming up in June and not only have one.
Okay, Tom, anything?
I'm fine with canceling the June 2nd meeting.
Okay, Ron?
I'd like to see if we can do it without the town manager. Bill's good about giving us a description of what's going on in details. He does a very good job. I would think that through legal and unless the town manager is required to be here, so I need legal's advice on that.
I have to research that. It's harder to see.
But I would hope we could work around it, allow him to go do his training, and we could continue on with the meeting on the 2nd. People are used to having the meeting on the 1st and 3rd of the month. Like I said, he can give us an outline and or a scenario might be presented, but he's very thorough in his outlines, and I think we could live with that.
Remember, I was the attorney, I don't advocate for anything, I don't make policy.
Is Pearlie going with you?
She is.
Okay.
Okay, Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I'm okay with not having a meeting, but if we have perhaps some items that might not need you to be there, like if there happens to be a lot of presentations that can be done during that meeting, that's a possibility. But I'm open to either one.
Okay, what are the possibilities of moving 1 week later? I know it's not the 1st and 3rd, but it would be 2nd and 3rd. How about that? Does that work for you?
It works for me. I try to do the agendas so that you have business at the right time. And so I've been trying to keep things either moving forward so that you're doing them now or on the 19th. I was trying to keep the agenda light for the 2nd.
Bill, what's our schedule like for the month of June? Have we got a lot on our plate to where we couldn't just do one meeting in the month of June?
I think you can do one meeting in the month of June.
And I recommend we do the last meeting and we do away with the 2nd, but you know what we got on our plate, and we've always talked about trying to reduce it to 1 meeting a month. Maybe one of these days that'll happen, but.
All right, so consensus, are we all right with eliminating the,
Do a motion.
okay, yeah, all right, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we eliminate the meeting on the 2nd and we hold our meeting on the 3rd meeting of the month.
Second. I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ron, second by Tom. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, moving to public comments. I've got Keith Harris and Bill Louder. Okay, and Marge.
Yes, Keith Harris, 25 ABC Road. Mr. Mayor, members of council, and those Water District Board Supervisors that stayed with us a moment of your time. I've had some of our neighbors ask for some help. The residents of Citrus are complaining of dust on the road. They are not, from my understanding, receiving any watering services on that road. And I would like very much for the town council to get with the water district and perhaps arrange that. It shouldn't be too much money involved. It will be a benefit to the residents of Citrus that other residents are receiving. I just think it's the right thing to do, and it needs to be addressed. There might be a agreement that needs to be drawn between the district and the town. The town does do already some subsidy monies for watering. I understand there's a pilot program on 61st that started last Friday for watering. And we would like very much to see that go for all roads. So please give it consideration. They are residents as well. They don't like breathing dust as well as the rest of us. Thank you.
Okay, all right, Ron will address that.
Yeah, I'll address the pilot program on 161st. First of all, it's not a pilot program. I agree with Keith about one thing. We need to water the roads and stuff for all our residents, but we need to take priorities. They did a trial run on 161st to see how long it would take. That's the longest road in Loxahatchee, okay, over 2 miles long. They paved A Road. We on 161st, we paved for North A Road. All right, I was hoping that when they paved North A Road and they watered it every time they graded it, that the common sense approach would be they'd take that water truck and move it over to our street because we pay taxes and assessments just like everybody else. Now, it took them 2 hours to do over 2 miles of road. And we had a situation where the first load of water was taken out of the A Road Canal at our intersection. And then we had a nurseryman on the north end that was willing to let us use his irrigation pond. Otherwise, it would have taken too long and it probably would have been useless. So we had a neighbor working with us. We got the water, the road wet down. Now the problem is that on a highly traveled road, that's going to last us anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour max. Our road is heavily traveled. Citrus is heavily traveled because of the park. You got people that's going to the park. They use Citrus for a shortcut to F Road. So that's another road that gets abused, along with Tangerine Drive, a neighborhood that gets abused. So I would like to see this council to come to a consensus that we, when the Water Control District has the time and they're available, that we pay them just like we would to grade the roads, to water the roads, and we listen to the residents, and if nobody calls in to have their roads watered, and we know we got people asking on Citrus, we know we got people asking on 161st. As many calls as we get, and we take the priorities and the ones that is going to be the most traveled roads. But I'd like to see a consensus tonight that we let the town manager work with the administrator over the Water Control District and take care of this problem. And if it becomes too costly, then the town manager can bring it back to us and we can put a stop to it.
I think we already do that, don't we? Don't we have a policy? Do we want to do it first? We don't? Okay. All right, so something we need to deal with. All right, Bill?
Bill out at E Road. Two things. One, pulled up the hydrogeology of our area from USGS. I'd like to see us, the town, come up with a resolution or whatever, an ordinance prohibiting any well being drilled deeper than about 150 feet. The first confining layer, or aquitard if you're from England, is the 175 feet on, this is using as a datum a PV 678 well that's drilled probably right here, pretty close. It was the closest one to our whole area. Now, a couple of reasons for that. If we break the confining layer above 175, so let's go to 150. Above 150, we're in our artificial aquifer. That's where our water is. That's where we're getting most of our wells. Below there, we're getting highly saline water, same report. And this ordinance, if we do, would also allow the town to do what a lot of other states are doing, which is prohibiting fracking, okay, hydraulic fracturing, drilling for gas and oil. That's the main reason I think that Governor Scott refuses to accept climate change, because fracking is after methane gas, natural gas, which is a huge global warming gas. Okay, the second item is local Palm Beach, Wellington fixing its water woes. Okay. Again, phosphorus is coming in here. Okay. Years ago, Army Corps of Engineers and South Florida Water Management made Acme Basin B clean up their act with regards to phosphorus polluting Arthur R. Marshall directly. Now it comes out to CBD1 goes to the stormwater treatment area. Eventually, we're going to fall under the gun with our pollutants. Okay? So we need a lot of different things, even in the equestrian facilities. First thing I did when I was invited on a tour over there back in the 90s was I looked at the manure bins on it. Luckily, it was a nice rainy day. And I said, what can we do to stop pollution? And the water was coming off the roof into this bin, and this brown stuff that Starbucks couldn't even make was going over to a drain. Okay, I said, put a lid on it. Okay, that's part of their BMPs now. We probably ought to go along the same route. The other thing they did was fertilizers. I like to use fertilizers of 666. Okay, anyway, over there, 0 is the middle number of phosphorus. Unless you have a soil test that says you're phosphorus poor, then you can go to a 2 to see if that solves the problem. So there's a lot of things we need to do. But the one I'd like to see put on the next agenda for consideration is an ordinance against wells deeper than 150 feet. Okay, thank you.
March?
March Herzog, A-Road. I just wanted to remind everyone that next Thursday, we're going to have our Waxahachie Groves Water Control District Candidates Forum, and it will start at 7 o'clock. And we have 2 candidates that have been invited to attend, and Ken Johnson is going to be our moderator. If you have any questions that you would like Ken to ask, please make sure you forward them to him. We will also have a representative from the Grassy Waters Natural Area there to explain what programs and activities are available. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. All right, Phyllis Maniglia.
Phyllis Maniglia, 359 Westview Road. We're talking about water. Waxahachie. What does it mean? Turtle, water. Okay, you were talking about the water truck having to go to the nursery down the road off of 161st to fill its truck. Why, gentlemen, do we not have any water on the north side of Okeechobee? Those canals are dead dry. I remember coming to a meeting about 2 to 3 years ago, and the board members were up in arms about people coming from town, putting trout lines out, taking our turtles to sell them for meat. Everybody was up in arms. Well, there's no turtles on the north side of Okeechobee. What is happening to that habitat? That's part of Waxahachie. What, please, our town leaders, please. This is what Waxahachie is about. So there's fish that are not spawning. There are turtles that are not laying eggs. What is this doing to our environment? Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. All right, moving to, do I have any more? All right, moving to, nothing on 4 or 5, move to 6, ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, this is second reading and public hearing of ordinance 2015-02, and I'll go ahead and read the title. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Waxahachie Groves, Florida, amending ordinance 2011, which established the Town Planning and Zoning Board as amended by ordinance 2012-02, to amend section 2, subsection entitled Composition and Term of Office, to change the term of office of Planning and Zoning Board members from 3-year terms to 1-year terms, providing for conflict, severability, codification, and effective date. I would like to ask the council to allow one change to the proposed ordinance. It's a clarification that was overlooked when I prepared this for the first reading. And the same section that's being amended in 1A, it's on page 13 of 96 of the agenda pack, to strike the phrase following his or her election or re-election to office. That's a leftover term when you were having 3-year terms with P and Z board members to match up yours. That's no longer necessary as you're amending it to 1-year terms. and that's consistent with the action that was intended by this ordinance. So I request that if you do consider this and pass on a second reading, that you do so with that additional change.
All right. We have an ordinance, discussion by council. I've got one public comment, Bill Lauda. No, that's 16, sorry. All right, no public comments on it. Entertain a motion for this ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2015-02 as amended.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Ryan makes a motion, second by Ron. Further discussion? Roll call vote?
Councilman Rocket,
Yes.
Councilman Liang,
Yes.
Mayor Browning,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Goldman.
Yes.
All right, moving to 6B.
Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, this is second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 2015-03. An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Waxahachie Groves, Florida, prohibiting the disposal of waste materials as defined herein within the town, providing for definitions, finding that a violation of this ordinance shall be deemed a nuisance, providing for enforcement, providing for conflict, severability, codification, and effective date. And as a result of the passage of the last meeting, Section 3 was amended to add a prohibition of any other item for which the property owner receives a tipping fee or similar compensation to receive such item for disposal or deposit.
Okay.
That was added to the prohibition in Section 3.
All right, I've got one comments by council. First off. Anybody?
I had a question, do we really think the fines, first offense of $100, is gonna make a dent in the process?
Well, remember one of the things that was discussed when we did this for the waste haulers was that, because this has to do with drivers of vehicles as well, that, there's enough to discourage them and get them to pay without forcing us to go to court necessarily on our first offense. That's why the initial offense is there. It may not be common knowledge for haulers, so to speak. So that's why it was set like that. And that was, you can set it however you would like, but that was the thought process. If this matches the same fines, will make it easier for our citations and for our BSO.
And we
Same
found
fines
that-
as say for waste haulers.
We found that once we were able to actually seize trucks, it seemed to make a difference. We've got that covered.
Yes, if we're doing it, we can do the same things to them as we were doing for the waste haulers.
Just reminders of, like 1 or 2 days after we caught the first guy, he came back and I'm wondering if second offense, if it's within a week, maybe it should be $2,000. So whatever they're trying. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they didn't seem to care, even if the truck was seized. Anyway.
And hopefully, this was also geared towards the owners of the property as well.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve
It's
ordinance
a public hearing, just make sure
Right.
there's no public.
15-03.
Okay, Jim makes a motion, so second. Second by Ryan. Further discussion by council. I've got Bill Lauda.
Bill Loudon Road, I'm glad you added the no tipping fee to that. Second thing is, John Ryan, I didn't get to read the whole ordinance, spelling everything out. John Ryan showed me some of the list of the different type of waste. Just make sure that in that list, you cover things like automobile tires. I don't know if that was,
Those are, when we went through it, those are subparts of solid waste.
oh, okay.
When the definition of solid waste captures a lot of those categories.
Automobiles, because I remember Danny Yearby telling me about somebody when he was taking a Pontiac, hit a Pontiac or something. So,
And when we went through that list, if they're already identified in another definition that we included, we didn't
oh, okay.
snowball.
So that kind of stuff is covered, okay,
Is
good.
there anybody in it on it?
I don't know that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Liang,
Yes.
Mayor Browning,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Goldman,
Yes.
Councilman Rocket.
Yes.
Moving to 7A, resolution. Mike, want to read that, or Bill?
Sure.
Mike?
I'll go ahead and read it. This is resolution 2015-10, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Waxahachie Groves, Florida, welcoming the election of Commissioner Melissa McKinley as County Commissioner for District 6, expressing the Town Council's optimism for working with Commissioner McKinley for the benefit of the residents of the town, providing for distribution of this resolution, providing for severability, conflicts, and for an effective date.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion for approve resolution 2015-10.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ron. Discussion by council. I've got one public comment. Dennis Lipp.
Dennis Litt, North Road. I don't know about you, but after all the money that was raised by this candidate and all the campaigning that went on by this candidate, and to have won fair and square the election, and now deciding to run for the federal Congress out of District 18, which means she'll have to move to District 18 in order to run. She does not have to quit her job as a county commissioner because it is a federal office. But I think we just need to hold on to that. I mean, this is something where, we've been sort of, I get the feeling like, somebody needed to walk across the pond and my head happened to be lying in the water and I got stepped on.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so I would just, it's a good idea. I don't know why we didn't do it in December. But here we are now, and I think if everything goes according to her wishes, she would be elected in 2016, and then be out of office 2017, and the governor will appoint somebody to basically serve 2 years.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Okay, Ron.
I definitely don't think we need to hold up on this resolution. First of all, she's already done us a favor by fighting for the red light at D Road in Okeechobee along with 4 other county commissioners. I don't think we need to take her rights away from her no more than us giving up rights. She's in a win-win situation right now. She can go higher up, and I would still hope that that would support the people of Florida. I don't know how that works, but if she doesn't win, then she can continue doing what she's doing, and she does it very well as a county commissioner. So no, she deserves this resolution, and so I frown on the fact that we would even think about holding it back.
All right, no other public comments. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0.
We don't have a motion or a second.
Yeah, I thought Brian made a
Oh, yes, he
motion
did, I'm
and
sorry.
Ron seconded.
Yeah, sorry. Mayor Browning? This is-
Oh, it is a roll call.
She overlooked that you had a motion on the
Yeah.
table.
Okay.
Because
Yes.
Discussion, I'm sorry.
Okay, yes.
Yes, Vice Mayor Gerald?
Yes.
Councilman Goldman?
I'm going to vote reluctantly yes, because it seems like the politics are already getting involved in this.
Councilman Rocket?
Yes.
Councilman Liang?
Yes.
It's one of these things that either way, it doesn't hurt us, and it might help us. So, I wonder if she will be able to reach that next level of office that she's aspiring to. But either way, it's one of those things that doesn't hurt. But anyway, okay, moving to 7B.
I'll describe it, Mayor, and then I'll let the attorney go through the resolution. 2 things, one thing especially that I wanted to point out is that typographical error, at least, I got the headings for the budget pages correct. However, in my enthusiasm to move it forward as quickly as possible, I failed in one of the other heading processes to reflect fiscal year 2014-15. It says 2013-14. Please ignore that. It is 2014-15. And the resolution speaks for itself. Basically, What we did was we recognized additional revenues and reductions in revenues. The major one in general fund was we added additional $25,000 for cost recovery fees. That matches on the flip side on expenditures, the cost recovery expenditures. So we'll have 60 coming in and 60 going out. On the expenditure side, because of some legislation, we kept all of the budgets with the same bottom line. So general fund, 1 million, it stays 1 million. The funds stay the same, nothing changed, so the money just moved around within various departments. Legislative, we moved some money into special events contributions, reduced some travel, and executive, we increased election expense because there's been some increased cost relative to the election. Cost recovery expenditures, I explained, also up 25,000. On other general government, we've got other services up 5. We've got code compliance down 2, 1,600. It's up and down all across the board. That's on page 32 of 96 of your agenda. And finally, the big number, we covered the appropriation for the land acquisition for the new town hall and the town building acquisition as well. Those numbers are there. The transfer that we were planning on putting $1 million back in fund balance has been reduced accordingly to $454,650, down from $1 million. Law enforcement, we did use some of the extra contractual services for targeted enforcement, if you recall, relative to the manure haulers and some other work. We are not going to use it all. We don't believe we'll use it by the rest of the year, so we reduced that some. And then we decreased public works services by 3,000. And then we moved it, that was the end of the general fund. There was no change. 2,095,897 remains 2,095,897. In the solid waste fund, we did not change CIP or transportation. Solid waste, we increased contractual waste oversight to accommodate the waste monitor, added 8,000 there. We reduced 2 costs, solid waste contractor and other sanitation services by 4,000 each. And that left it even at $441,268. And that was the end of that. I also provided the statement of estimated changes in fund balance for your perusal. That was a request by the council a couple of years ago, so we included that as well. With that, I guess we're ready for a resolution. One would like to be approved.
You want to talk about it, should it be?
Question, please? Do you recommend all of these changes?
It is in concert with amending the total budget to accommodate expenditures and what the council has requested.
Do you personally recommend all these changes?
I suspect I can.
Okay.
Okay. Mike?
Resolution 2015-15, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Waxahachie Groves, Florida, adopting a budget amendment for the town's budget for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2014 and ending September 30, 2015, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
All right. I'll entertain a motion and a second, and then we'll discuss it.
I make a motion we approve resolution 2015-15.
Jim makes a motion, Brian seconds. Discussion by council members. Anything? Have nothing by the public? Roll call vote?
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Dolson,
No.
Councilman Rocket,
Yes.
Councilman Liang,
Yes.
Mayor Browning.
Yes. Moving to 7C. This is planning and zoning.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the Town Council, at this point, each of you would make your nomination for regular member and then collectively for 2 alternate members of the Planning and Zoning Board. Once we go through that nomination process, the names can be placed into the title and then read and approved by the Town Council, if that's how you want to proceed.
All right.
Mayor, you you go first.
I'm going to reappoint Dennis Lipp.
The order and the resolutions would call for Ron Gerald on that.
Grace Joyce.
Councilman Goldson.
Lawrence Corning.
Councilman Liang.
Oh, Ron, close.
Monica Close. Councilman Rocket.
Robert Crawford.
Okay, is there consensus on alternates?
I believe I'm the only one that knows two alternates that would like to be on the committee, unless somebody else knows them. James Hamel and Joyce Batchelor would like to be alternates. Anybody got any problems?
I believe Karen Peasley also wants to be an alternate.
Oh, does she?
She does. She has her resumes included in the package.
Okay, she's, well then I'm sure that James Hamel or Joyce Batchelor, you want to step aside?
I will.
Okay. Karen Peasley and James Hamel.
James, well, that again, if that's the consensus of the council, we can put those names in.
And anybody else, any thoughts?
Fine.
I mean, I go more by who I know, and I would go with Joyce and Karen. But, I hate to have to speak up.
And James is flexible too, so no less, the consensus is Joyce.
Go Joyce.
And Joyce definitely likes to stay abreast of what's happening in Loxahatchee more than most people.
Joyce, I'm sorry, give me the names again, Peasley.
Joyce Batchelor and Karen Peasley. I know Karen put a lot of work into that big dog.
No, it's not. Give me the two names again, please. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Joyce Batchelor,
Joyce, my bad. Joyce. Batchelor.
yeah, Batchelor.
Yeah, Batcheler.
I apologize, Joyce. Okay, and
And Karen Peasley.
so Bill was right. I owe him $1.
I know that stuff can go on legally in these meetings.
Wasn't bad.
Okay.
Fine.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, been working with us.
Yes, Jim.
Nominating Dennis Lipp, who has threatened you personally, as well as the rest of the town council, with consequences if you or any council member votes other than his way. Mr. Lipp tells you to vote as on any issue before the council, certainly conveys not only disrespect for you as a mayor, but as well as the rest of the council, but it suggests that you must answer to him. I'm troubled not only by this threat as an indication of how Mr. Lipp conducts himself relative to the town council, but who knows what threats or other actions he would resort to get his way on the PZ board. His threat against you and this council speaks volumes about his quest for power and control in this town. Mr. Mayor, for these reasons, I would request you make a different nomination to the P&Z board.
One of the things I've learned in this business for a long time is every resident in this town has the ability to say whatever they believe. And I look at Dennis's performance on that board, and he's done a very good job. He was elected to this board in the very first council. And, I know there were people upset about the election, and I do not take any threat like that. If I took them all personal, I'd be loony. So, and I might be for people. But anyway, so I'm gonna let mine stand. Now, the rest of this council can choose to change that, but
Well, you vote as a slate. You each have your
Right.
own nomination. They're all in the resolution. And you're gonna vote as a slate at this point.
so I'm gonna stand with my choice.
Okay. With that, I'll go ahead and I'll read the resolution titled 2015-17, a resolution of the town council of the town of Loxahatchee Groves, Florida, appointing Dennis Lipp, Grace Joyce, Lawrence Corning, Veronica Close, and Robert Crawford as regular members of the town's planning and zoning board to serve terms of 1 year, and appointing Joyce Batchelor and Karen Peasley as alternate members of the town's planning and zoning board to serve terms of 1 year, providing for conflict severability and an effective date.
All right. we need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Ryan makes a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. Further discussion by council. Roll call vote.
Councilman Rocket,
No,
Councilman Liang,
Yes.
Mayor Browning,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Goldson.
Yes.
All right, moving to item 7D.
Mr. Mayor, members of the town council, this is a resolution you requested be prepared at the last meeting. It would provide for procedures and public participation clarification for your boards and committees. It is modeled after your own administrative procedure. Be happy to answer any questions, but basically that's what just transitions the public comment portions, the limitations on time limits or on debate and everything else that the council has its own policies to its boards and committees.
Okay.
I'll read the resolution
Yes.
2015-18, a resolution of the town council, of the town of Waxahachie Groves, Florida, relating to procedures and public participation for town board and committee meetings, providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve resolution number 2015-18.
Okay, motion made by Ron, second by Ryan. Further discussion by council. Okay, roll call vote.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Liang,
Yes.
Mayor Browning,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Goldson,
Yes.
Councilman Rocket.
yes.
All right, moving to quasi judicial, 7E. Mike?
Yes, sir. Let me get my bearings straight here. This is a quasi judicial public hearing for the consideration of a site plan approval. Would be resolution 2015-16 relating to property owned by Willie H. and Frankie J. Day, and consisting of 9.3 acres more or less located at the southwest corner of Okeechobee Boulevard and Folsom Road. As this is a quasi-judicial hearing, there are procedures that are required to be explained prior to commencing this. Generally speaking, the mayor calls this to an order, which you've just done. During the presentation, our planner will confirm that notices have been provided as required by code. The applicant goes first. It's the applicant's burden to demonstrate that they've satisfied the conditions in the code for the site plan approval. They're limited to 30 minutes. Maybe won't go that long, but that's what the limitation is in the code. Thereafter, the staff goes. The staff makes a presentation to the council, again with the same limitation of 30 minutes. At this point, it's just appropriate to point out that what you have in your agenda packet is part of the record. It will not be introduced formally in the evidence, but it is part of the record for you to be considered tonight. At the conclusion of the presentation by the staff, you will open it up to public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes each, and those time limits cannot be assigned to other public commenters. At the conclusion of the public hearing, it goes in reverse order. The staff will respond, and then the applicant gets to have the final word. Those rebuttals are for a maximum of 5 minutes, unless the council determines that it needs to get further time due to questioning or anything like that. Formal rules of evidence don't apply, but you can just deal with whatever you give it whatever weight you want when documents or pictures are given to you. You don't consider irrelevant or immaterial or competent evidence or anything that's duly repetitive or defamatory. That's in your code as well. Unsworn statements are not given the same way as sworn statements. At the end of my explanation, I will ask anybody who intends to speak and wants their statements and to be considered sworn testimony that they be sworn in. So unless there's any questions in the process, I'd like to go ahead and do that at this point. If you think you might want to speak on this application or you are going to speak on this application, please raise your right hand and I'll swear you in at this time. Anybody who isn't sworn in but changes their mind, you can speak. Just let me know when you get to the podium and I'll swear you in if you want to be sworn. If you swear or affirm the statements or testimony you give this evening should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Okay, thank you. At this point, Mr. Mayor, it would be appropriate to turn it over to the applicant.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Rick Fair. I'm the land planner with the firm of Urban Design Coding Studios. Here this evening on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Day. We're all very familiar with this property. I'm sure you remember this is in front of you for land use and zoning approval earlier this year, which was a follow-up to the settlement agreement between the Days and the town. So this evening, we're in front of you to hopefully finalize the zoning approvals for a site plan approval. And the plan that's in front of you this evening hasn't changed that dramatically from the plan that was in front of you that was an exhibit to that land use and rezoning application, and also the plan that was a part of the settlement agreement. So we'll just run through a bit of history on the development of the site plan and then where we are today. So, all familiar with the property on the southwest corner of Oak Grove and Folsom. So this is a plan that was presented in 2011. The one item to note here is the building that was located on the east side of the entrance off of Okeechobee. That building has shifted, and there's a variety of reasons. It was primarily based on some input from your planning and zoning board on the preservation of some existing vegetation. So the site plan is developed from here. This also had more square footage than what's on the plan in front of you today, and had different uses. This included some office uses, whereas the plans in front of you today is really just retail and restaurants. So in 2012, the plan was revised to relocate that building that was on the east side of that entrance off of Okeechobee, so that the preservation of the existing vegetation right there next to that entrance could be accomplished, and reallocated some of the other site design. So this is the plan that was developed in 2014. And you can obviously see that there's 2 areas where buildings were removed, and this brought the plan into compliance with what would eventually be settled upon as the 30,000 square feet cap. From this plan, we've made some minor adjustments, but this is really the basis of the plan that is attached to the rezoning and land use approval and the plan that's in front of you this evening. So the ordinance that you all approved to change the land use and rezone the property required certain things. One, it required that we submit to the county for traffic performance standards review, that the buildings on the property be limited to 1 story, that the site design and the building design comply with the Rural Vista guidelines, that we pursue connectivity with the Red Barn, the incorporation of a Palm Tram bus shelter, that we perform a vegetative survey, that eventually we will file a plat, and then also consultations with your equestrian group. So we'll hit on these one by one. We have received concurrency approval, which is the traffic performance standards review from Palm Beach County, so that has been accomplished. All the buildings are still maintained at the 1-story height. In our opinion, the site design, and I'm sure Jim will touch on this in his presentation, the site and the building design, in our opinion, meet the Rural Vista guidelines. We did pursue the connectivity with the Red Barn. At this point, the last that I heard, the town had reached out to the owner of the Red Barn, and they weren't interested. Yes, sir.
I need to ask a question while we're talking about the subject. Okay, the Red Barn was approached today. Okay, now, the man himself said that he has not been contacted. I have to take his word for it unless somebody wants to step up and say they contacted him. Now, he seems to be like he wants to be a good neighbor, and this connectivity is very important. You go along Southern Boulevard, all those Publix, Lowe's, they've got connectivity from one place to another because it's crazy getting out on. Okeechobee's going to be no different. we need our residents, if they want to leave Red Barn and go next door and do business, we don't need them to come out on Okeechobee Boulevard when they can have a connected road. So I would hope that, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I spoke to him personally myself. This was back in February or March, and he informed me that up until the end of April, beginning of May was his busy season, and he would not be available to discuss the topic until then. I haven't called him in the last week or so, but I did speak to him.
Okay, that was Beck you talked to?
Yes.
Okay, that to me is not a no. In other words, he was too busy to talk, but I think it's time to talk now, because that's very important to me. It's very important to the neighbors. And my question is, we all have a problem with that, because it would be beneficial to the public. The people that's coming to do business with you, they may have to do business with the Red Barn, so you'd be helping the residents of Loxahatchee. So do y'all have a problem with it?
Well, and I don't mean to put words in Mr. Day's mouth, but I'll try to relay to you what he's relayed to me on this issue. So where the cross-access was originally shown on some of these original designs, you can see the arrow in the very northwest corner of the property, which, let's see, I guess I won't be able to point out to the folks behind me, but it's the arrow that's adjacent to the front parking lot for that building. So right, so right here.
Okay.
So that was originally where the cross-access was planned, and then as the plan developed, and that use adjacent to that cross-access switched from retail to a fast food restaurant, you can see where the drive-through loop for the drive-through restaurant is now situated. So really that's not a good spot for the cross-access, because then that would require that people coming and going between the two properties would have to go through the drive-through lane. So where we had talked about providing the cross-access is right in this area.
That's beautiful.
And I'll just relay some of the concerns that Mr. Day had. Obviously, if you've been to that part of the Red Barn property, that's where they park a lot of their trailers. And so I guess I should start off that Mr. Day is not completely opposed. He doesn't want that to be a hindrance to the approval for this evening. He's more than willing to be a good neighbor and provide the cross-access. I think that we're in agreement with Mr. Day that the cross-access benefits the Red Barn property owner more so than it does Mr. Day or whoever will eventually develop his property. But again, he's willing to provide it. You know, it was just that, like Jim had said, he had reached out, and you know, we didn't want that delay or the response from the Red Barn owner to delay our process. So that's why we continued forward. We're more than happy to provide it if both of the property owners can come to a legal agreement that makes sense for both parties. ComTrain has indicated to us that they don't have any need for a bus shelter at this point in time, so you won't see one incorporated into the design. A vegetative survey was completed. Like I said, a lot of the site design has, especially in the north central part of the property, has been done to maintain a lot of the existing vegetation. The plat will be filed following this process. As you can imagine, Mr. Day didn't want to get too far along with the planning process until he knew that the site plan approval was in place. And then, as you can see in your backup, we did have a joint meeting between the Planning and Zoning Board and RETAG, and you'll see some of the recommendations that both of those bodies made to us, and I'll touch on those in a little bit. So the plan that's in front of you this evening is a little bit more refined. Some of the things that we have incorporated into this design is a more detailed landscape design. So you'll see in that area where we were talking about the preservation of existing vegetation, not only are we maintaining some of the existing vegetation, but we're also enhancing that with some native species in that area, as well as providing buffers along the perimeter of the property. And just one item to note as it relates to your code, the code only requires perimeter buffering adjacent to vehicular use areas. So from the very technical perspective of your code, a buffer along the frontage of Okeechobee and along a portion of the frontage on Folsom wouldn't be required. because there are not vehicular use areas adjacent to those rights of way. Mr. Day did direct us that he would like landscaping because he wants this to be a nicely designed piece of property, not only for the eventual person who develops the property, but also for the town. So that was important to him, and that's been his mantra to us as we designed the sites, that he didn't want us to minimize the design aspects, but he wanted us to incorporate as much as possible. So here's that vegetative area highlighted in red. These two areas highlighted, the other two vacant areas that are highlighted in red, were obviously leftover out parcels once the square footage of the property based on the settlement agreement was reduced down to 30,000 square feet. Mr. Day was willing to commit that those areas could be utilized for special events, temporary sales, that sort of thing. And I think that option is still there if there's any interest in the town to allow that sort of thing. Otherwise, they'll just remain as open grass areas. So again, here's the location of the connectivity with the Red Barn that we had discussed previously. So one of the things that we've asked for is some additional internal signage, and really the reasoning for that, so the 3 internal signs that we've asked for are highlighted with the yellow stars. And as you can see that in half, the reason why we were asking for those 3 internal signs, which is above the minimum code allowance, is so that somebody coming in off of Okeechobee, if they wanted to get into that drive-through lane, that they don't make that first right, which in our opinion could create some backup and stacking issues if folks started making that first right trying to get into the drive-through. Not only would there be the potential for blocking people backing in and parking in that parking lot, but then also just the pure fact that that's a successful fast food restaurant that cars could back up. So why we've asked for those additional signs and where the 3 yellow stars are, so people are directed to continue going south and make that second right to get into the drive-through. So it creates more stacking and a safer situation. So here are the elevations that were prepared by Mr. and Mrs. Day, Mr. and Mrs. Day's architect. And again, we feel that these are in compliance with the Rural Vista guidelines. This would be the restaurant that's in the northeast corner that would butt right up against the proposed lake. And the retail buildings, and then the other retail building. And just to show you that the proposed monument signage for the project would be consistent with the architecture of the buildings. So some of the recommendations that we received from your planning and zoning board that I believe were supported by the equestrian group was provision of a 12-foot horse trail easement, that parking spaces be limited to code minimum, that there be a review of the application by the town's engineer, there be an analysis of the project access by the town's engineer, and an analysis of off-site traffic improvements by the town's engineer. So I'll start off, and Mr. Martin Perry is here this evening in case there's any legal questions that we need to touch on as it relates to the settlement agreement. The understanding that we have based on that settlement agreement was that the provision of a 12-foot horse trail easement was not a part of the settlement agreement. So you will see that the plan in front of you this evening does not include that horse trail easement. When we were going through some of the logistics and some of the concerns that we had with your planning and zoning board, there seemed to be a lot of open-ended questions in terms of ongoing maintenance, who would construct it, how would it be constructed, and I know that they're beyond my level of expertise, but there are some legal, I think statutory protections for a property owner, but that really wasn't the main concern. It was more who's going to build it, who's going to maintain it, and then what's it going to be constructed of, and those were just some questions that from just a pure detail perspective we felt were open-ended, but then from a legal perspective, I believe that Mr. Day's attorney had consulted with the town's attorney that the 12-foot horse trail easement was not a part of the settlement agreement, so that's why it's not on the plan in front of you this evening. The parking spaces being limited to code minimum, we have provided both paved spaces and grass parking spaces. So the paved spaces that are on the site plan in front of you are the code minimum. So the only spaces above code minimum are grass parking spaces. And really, that gets back to the allowance of special events or temporary sales in those two grass areas. That we thought it would be nice to have some additional grass parking if those areas were utilized for special events or temporary sales, so that that parking wouldn't interfere with some of the other business operations on the property. The town's engineer, both the civil engineer, which is Keshavars and Associates, and Pender Troutman, reviewed our applications and provided us with comments. We feel that we've addressed those comments adequately. I'm sure Jim will touch on that during his presentation. As far as off-site traffic improvements go, there was a couple of different conversations that preceded this hearing. One was what was to occur at the intersection of Okeechobee and Folsom, and then the other was traffic calming on Folsom. And Mr. Day, and I think that Kerry Kilday may have indicated this to you all in prior hearings, and I indicated this to your planning and zoning board, that Mr. Day was more than happy to facilitate any conversations as it related to those off-site traffic improvements, and any direct impact from his development, he would accept what impact that created. So what we have found, and Mr. Day's traffic engineer is here, Kyle Duncan from Simmons and White, if you've got any technical questions related to these issues. We have had multiple meetings with Commissioner McKinley, as well as George. We had one meeting with the county engineer, and a couple of the options that were discussed were one, a roundabout at the intersection of Okeechobee and Folsom, and then the other was a signal. And from what the county engineer has relayed to us, the roundabout is not the best option, because at this point in time, the county does not allow roundabouts for 4-lane section roads. While I understand that Okeechobee is currently 2, there is a goal from the county's perspective for that roadway to be 4. I know that some folks in the town would not like to see it go to 4, but from the county's perspective, they see the potential for that roadway to go to 4 lanes. So they don't currently have a specification for a roundabout for a 4-lane roadway. So in their mind, the roundabout would be a temporary solution if Okeechobee becomes a 4-lane road. So based on some analysis that the county had, Bill's traffic engineer do, the intersection currently warrants a signal, traffic signal. So from what we have been told, the county will be funding that signal on their own dime. Mr. Day's project does not have direct impact on that per se, because the signal is currently warranted. I don't know the timing of when the county will fund that signal, but what we have been told is that the county will pay for that signal on their own dime. As it relates to the traffic calming measures on Folsom, we've had a couple of your residents that have expressed a lot of concern with the high level of speed that people travel on Folsom. And again, Mr. Day did allow his team to be a part of the conversation, facilitate the conversation with the county and with your staff. And what we have been told is that in order to provide traffic calming on Folsom Road, that roadway would have to be removed from the county's thoroughfare plan, which the county didn't seem all that opposed to, but I think that request has to come from the town and or its residents. And if that were to proceed forward and the roadway is removed from the thoroughfare plan, then the county would work with the town in terms of providing traffic calming measures on Folsom Road. Again, not a responsibility of Mr. Day, because his project doesn't necessarily have a direct impact per se as it relates to the current issue. That's really the meat of my presentation. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you all may have and any of the residents may have.
Any questions? Ron?
Chris, who did I talk to about impact fees? You or Marty?
In terms of what the impact fees may be?
What, I heard they were gonna be 400,000.
Mr. Day actually calculated those, and I gotta be honest, he gave them to me, and I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Good evening. Kyle Duncan with Simmons and White. We did do a quick and dirty calculation of just the roadway impact fees, and they were approximately $370,000. Okay. That's just roadway. There's other impact fees that come into play also, but they're not near the amount of the roadway. That's the bulk of the fees.
Right. So, could you get me a total at a later date of all the impact fees? The reason I'm asking this is your business is going to affect Loxahatchee Groves. Now, if we have to fight with the county and tell them that we deserve those impact fees, then I would expect the county to give them to us for a red light, for calming devices on Folsom. And I think Melissa McKinley would support us on that, just like y'all been talking to her, and she's been trying to find ways to do calming devices. And now we know that a red light is warranted there, you know.
It is warranted, and Mr. Webb, the county engineer, does have a allocation of what he calls traffic calming funds, and he insinuated in the meeting that they would fund the cost of the speed humps along Folsom Road for the traffic calming measures.
Any other council members?
I have a question.
So let Bill take it, and then Jim.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to bring it up under my report, but I wanted to report to you that Commissioner McKinley brought up the Folsom Road thoroughfare removal. It was approved by the county commission. Staff supports it. The next step will be going through the comp plan amendment, and everything looks like that is changing as right now as we speak.
Okay.
Melissa's still working for us, then, right, Bill?
She is.
Thank you.
Okay, Jim?
When I look at the monument signs, the locations, you say that each of the following locations, Oakey Boulevard, and then Southern and Folsom Road entrance.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah,
mean?
that was a typo. That's a typo, Mike. Southern should be stricken. It's.
I was saying, you asking that question.
Folsom entrance and the Okeechobee entrance.
Just Folsom.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was wondering how they're going to get an entrance on Southern, so that answered the question.
Okay, any other council members? All right, the only concerns I have, is the drive-through. I mean, that kind of caught me by surprise. Because the drive-through restaurant generates a lot of trash. I mean, any of the residents that have picked up trash on Okeechobee realize that a large percentage of it belongs, or used to belong to McDonald's, Burger King, all those places where people can drive in, get their food, and somehow they think the inside of their car should be more pristine than our town, so it's pitched out the window, and it's all along our road. So, that's kind of my only concern. I really am not crazy about a drive-through. Whether it's a McDonald's, Taco Bell, Dunkin', I mean, I don't know. And the other thing is, I wish that you could move that building just a little bit to the south. In other words, the parking lot and everything, encroach a little bit on that green space, but replace it with green space on the other side of the building, and then allow the access to Red Barn in the front along there, because it's going to be a harder sale to him to do it in the back, and I think it'll be less effective with our residents. One of the issues that's going to be a mess of an intersection anyway, with the school right across the road and everything else. The light's going to help, but those are just a couple of my thoughts. I don't know how the other council.
So I believe that the interest in the property has been from the Dunkin' Donuts.
Okay.
But
That hurts me.
to answer a couple of things.
Yeah, most of it will. That'll go down Folsom.
So, I mean, understanding that Dunkin' Donuts may not be the most desired neighbor, but somehow they stay in business. But the issue for moving that building back would be that Dunkin' Donuts would probably, it wouldn't be as desirable of a location for them, because then they don't have their frontage right on Okeechobee.
Okay, well, there wouldn't be anything in front of them, so they would still have that, it would just, they'd be a little further back. I mean, would just be my thought. I mean, because I'm trying to still facilitate, I agree with Ron. I think it's important to have some kind of access from the Red Barn so that people don't have to go out and back in.
I guess the other response to that is that if understanding and agreeing that providing the cross-access further to the north would be more beneficial to the customers of Red Barn, there's the potential that those tractor trailers could still utilize that cross-access to the north, and then maneuvering them through the property, coming in from that northern cross access may be a lot more difficult than if we provide it there in the center, then they've got a straight shot either to go to Folsom or to make that left after the entrance on Okeechobee.
You know, no matter where you put Dunkin' Donuts, you still gonna have the same people without character dumping their trash on Loxahatchee, Royal Palm Beach, everywhere, okay? Now, thank God we got Seminole Ridge High School that cleans up Okeechobee Boulevard for us. Now, the only thing I'd want to change about that building right there would be turn it into an indoor shooting range, but I guess that's out of the question at this point, because I know we could friggin' enjoy that in Loxahatchee Groves and shoot straight. You can't get a place there because they're always packed out 7 days a week, so that's just a thought.
Okay, any other questions by council members? I've got Bill Loud.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm taken back by the drive-through also.
I've seen Dunkin' in Wellington, and it's a popular place, and a lot of times I'm in that line too. But when you go by that one on Forest Hill, it's amazing. When it first opened, the traffic was all the way out almost to Forest Hill until they blocked the other access to the mall itself.
Yeah.
But anyway.
The drive-through rate's been long. I brought that down. This other concern, the drive-through creates a lot of traffic. And your office space is not creating that kind of traffic. It's more predictable versus all day long, all night long. So I really don't like the drive-through concept, but in speaking directly to Mr. Day and his representatives, I would like a commitment. What I heard about the traffic light was, in my mind, what I had put to you all back when was that if you can't show me that you have documentation that you have tried and the county's turned you down on one option and you haven't gone back and they've turned you down again, then I was not interested in approving this because the traffic light needs to be on that corner. But it seems like the county has stepped up with an alternative to take care of that problem in terms of funding. But my perspective is that if I can't get Mr. Day's approval, commitment, that says whatever the county comes up with, if it's relative to a traffic signal on that corner, he will make it happen if it means providing a location for a mast arm or a pole for a cable arm. But it's not going to be, what I heard, I thought, was he'll evaluate the impact on his land and decide. That's not good enough for me. I need a commitment that says he will help make that happen. It's not that he will prevent it from happening because he doesn't like or he doesn't accept the way the county wants to do it. So I've kind of moved it down the road to say he doesn't have to show all the commitment, you know, in terms of I've gone to the mountain and I'm trying to get this done and he won't let me. But now we're at a point where somebody will do it. And my approval depends on his commitment that he will make that decision in favor of accommodating a light structure that would make that light happen on that corner.
I'm sorry if I misstated that, but I don't believe that Mr. Day has any problem facilitating the signal if that requires any equipment to be placed on his property. And Kyle can come up and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe with the way that those designs occur, I believe that they put the mast arms and the structures, the way that we designed the plane where you've got that corner clip, I believe that they could put some of the equipment within the current right of way. I didn't mean to say that Mr. Day is not willing to accommodate any of that equipment on his property if it's necessary.
Okay.
And the only other reminder as it relates to the restaurant, fast food restaurant, is that was on the plan that was attached to the rezoning and the land use and the part of the settlement.
Mr. Mayor, just,
Yes,
I don't interrupt, but would you go next to staff before we open up the public comment?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh.
All right. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to reiterate some of the statistical data, just for the record.
If you speak up a little bit louder.
Okay, sorry about that. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. The application is for the Day property site plan application 15-1 approval. As Mike mentioned earlier, notices have been provided to the public and advertised in the paper, and signs placed on the property per the requirements of our code. The agenda report on the application is on page 45 of your agenda package. Property is 9.3 acres, southwest corner of Okeechobee and Folsom. The current future land use designation and zoning designation are both commercial low. A condition of the future land use plan approval was that the project intensity not exceed 0.074 floor area ratio, or a maximum of 30,000 square feet, with the possible exception that if the town approved any higher floor area ratios along Okeechobee in the future, that this project would automatically receive an increase to the FAR that was approved in the future. The proposed site plan, which is on page 57 of your agenda pack, is consistent with the 30,000 square foot limitation for the comprehensive plan, and includes a mix of retail and restaurant uses. Staff has reviewed the proposed plan for consistency with the comprehensive plan and the provisions of the Unified Land Development Code, and found it compliant with both documents. Staff's detailed review of the site plan in terms of the requirements of the Unified Land Development Code are presented on pages 50 through 57 of the agenda package. The proposed site plan was reviewed at a joint meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board and RETAG Advisory Committee on February 19th, and at that meeting, both bodies recommended approval subject to 5 conditions, which are listed on page 45 of the agenda package. And the applicant briefly went through those 5 conditions. The first of which was a recommendation for a 12-foot horse trail easement along the northern property line. Second was the parking spaces not exceed the code required amount, which they have revised the site plan to show that to be the case. 175 spaces are required, and that they have 175 surfaced parking spaces, but they've also included an additional pervious parking spaces on the southern boundary. The reason for that increase in spaces is because they're looking at the potential for, on either of those 2 grassed areas for having future outdoor events, and they wanted to provide parking to accommodate those events, and they put it in as grass parking or pervious parking at this point. The next condition that was recommended was that prior to council's consideration, the town's consulting engineer review the applicant's traffic study, specifically including trip generation rates and the project's impact on Okeechobee and the Okeechobee-Folsom intersection. That particular request for a condition got a little interesting because the project had already received its traffic performance standards approval letter from the county prior to the committee's recommending that be done. So we have the town's engineer subcontract a review of the traffic study by third-party consultant, and they had several comments about the trip generation and some of the assumptions that were made in the previous traffic study. But since since they had already received their TPS approval from the county, we pretty much had to go with that approval. Most of the traffic generation comments were related to the Forest Hill Boulevard, Southern Boulevard intersection, and some of the assumptions as to future traffic that this project might generate at that intersection. So there really was no direct impact on any of the town roads from that analysis. They also, there also was some comments about the depth of the driveway throat on Folsom. The consultant felt that the driveway throat wasn't deep enough. The site plan was revised to show a ingress-egress entrance on Okeechobee, which resulted in not having to have the driveway throat be extended to the depth that the third-party engineer recommended. So we felt that comment was adequately addressed. And then finally, the third-party engineer really did not have any comments relative to the internal circulation of the project. Regarding the first recommendation for a condition, the 12-foot easement for a horse trail, the applicant would prefer not to have that easement be included as a condition, and staff really does agree with that request for several reasons. The frontage on Okeechobee is 650-ish feet, and with the developed red barn to the west and the likely intersection improvements to Okeechobee Folsom with the red light, and access to any future trails that might be extended up Folsom, that would require a crossing Folsom and gaining access to the other side of the railway the rail that currently borders the east side of Folsom. And we felt that by making that requirement, we in effect were requiring an easement to nowhere. And we just felt that, plus the fact that the town does not have a policy at this point for how trails and walkways are going to be addressed along Okeechobee. So that we felt that it might be a little premature to include this as a condition. So on that basis, we're recommending that the condition requiring the horse trail not be included in this part. Based on the staff's review and determination of consistency with the comprehensive plan and compliance with the town's ULDC requirements, staff is recommending approval of the site plan, subject to the conditions of approval, which are included on. Let me see. As a matter of fact, let me read the staff recommendation in the record. That's on page 448 of the staff report. Staff finds the proposed final site plan consistent with the town's comprehensive plan, ULDC zoning requirements and site plan criteria, and recommends approval of site plan application 2015-01, subject to the conditions of approval on page 68 of the agenda pack. Now, the conditions of approval, there aren't really any outstanding conditions of approval. Most of them are standard conditions that we assign to all of the site plans that come before them. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions for Jim? Council members? All right. That conclude your presentation, Jim?
Yes, it does.
All right, now do we go to public comments?
Yes, question for Bill, for this
Okay.
the financial issue. I don't know if Mike had a chance to pass this by you, Bill, on our cost recovery issues. If we, are we in a situation where we're going to be in a hole on any of the costs incurred relative to this application before or after settlement?
The issue relative to current costs of recovery is it's up to date and fine. There was an issue, and still exists an issue, for cost recovery before the settlement occurred. The town did send an invoice to the property owner. We have not received remittance of those funds.
How much is that?
It is approximately $8,000.
Approximately what?
The $8,730.39.
Okay.
And that was all accumulated prior to. They have two other cost recovery accounts, both of them in a positive range.
I mean, this has been, as you know, the issue we've had in the past, and how we got through the first go-around, if you will, without having cost recovery up to date, is, that's something in the past, it's something that we continue to struggle with. Obviously, going forward, there's been an improvement. But I'd like to consider the applicant to tell us at least what their plans are relative to those unpaid charges.
Chris Berry, the reason I told it to you is, to be honest with you, we hadn't realized that there was an outstanding balance until Jim had told me, he called me this afternoon and told me that there was an issue with the cost recovery. My assumption when he told me that was it was related to the current town engineer review that had just occurred as it related to the site plan. I was not aware that there was an outstanding balance as it related to the settlement agreement. That's news to me, and Mr. Day, I don't believe has received anything within the recent past, so I mean, we're finding out about that just right now.
Well, do we have an option to possibly have that considered to be paid? I mean, obviously, if there's a positive balance in some of the current stuff, we would look at it in one big package, but this seemed like, and this is probably our mistake, I'm not saying it's only, well, certainly not only our mistake, but it was our mistake in not keeping abreast of the costs that we were incurring while the process was going on. But we find ourselves at the end of the road, or near the end of the road, and I'd just like it to be considered, we get that.
I would suggest, I wouldn't put it as a condition for the approval, but, people were referencing the settlement, had nothing really to do with the settlement. We do have a cost recovery ordinance, and the settlement did contemplate that cost recovery would be during our normal, they were responsible for a normal cost recovery. So I think what I would suggest is, if they're hearing for the first time, let me and Bill work it out with them in order to get paid, because, if it's due and it's owing, it should be paid either through the settlement agreement or through our code of ordinances. They just don't have the information coming in tonight to do that.
All right, except for
What I hear is from the site plan applications,
Right.
the one you have tonight, the one that was related to the comp plan that was approved earlier this year.
I did not intend to hold them hostage, I brought it up to make sure that they're aware of it, and I'd like to get them to look at it. With you, that sounds like the way to go.
And we will.
You and staff.
Okay. All right, any other questions for them? I've got public comments. I've got Bill Lauda. I've got Nina Corey.
Bill out at E Road, and I stand here very unusually. I'm unsworn. I hate to swear a lot.
Would you like to be sworn?
Sure.
Do you swear affirm the statements or testimony you give this evening should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. What the mayor brought up was exactly what I was gonna bring up, is if you switch the green space with back or squeeze it, signage, something known as people are gonna know it's there. It doesn't have to be that close to the road. Get the entrance up at the north end, across there, and just both sides say no cross traffic with trailers, with 18-wheelers. I mean, you don't need to go that way with 18-wheelers to begin with. And also, it'll do one other thing. If that is moved down, it'll cut down the amount of internal signage needed. And the second point is, whether it's a trail to nowhere or not, eventually something should happen. Okay, that, we don't know what's going to happen with the widening of Oki right now, but there should be a strip left for in the future. It won't be built if it's not going anywhere. And crossing over Folsom to get to the east side of Folsom Canal, okay, if that's a potential to use as a trail, because going down Folsom right now with the sidewalk there and everything, that's going to be very strange to take people's property. Okay. There's horses crossing busy roads in Wellington all the time. Okay. There's a light there, put a second button, 8 feet, whatever, let them cross the road. When it happens, because it's one piece, there's, what, 6 more miles to go to make a trail inside the sidewalk. I mean, it took us a long time, you and I and a bunch of other people fought to get the sidewalk there. It took a long time to get the bicycles off the road. So, you know, there has to be some east-west connectivity somewhere. How it's going to be done on Okeechobee, again, we were talking about the Bensel Trail. That'll probably never happen because of the amount of lawsuits that will be involved in that, just north of Okie. But then the only east-west connectivity you're going to have is going to be 6 Court North collecting and north. That's a whole bunch of miles in between. Something 10, 15 years from now should happen. Okay? But to have that cross connectivity at the back is probably also unsafe, it's less secure. Okay? Because the more visible things are at night, the less is going to happen. And besides that, everybody's going to notice Dunkin' Donuts there, the sheriff's vehicles are going to be there. Oh, you left? Yeah. Oh, no.
Nina Corning, 2834 E Road, Annapolis. Again, I'm also disappointed you took away the 12-feet course easement, equestrian easement. Should have probably read Greenway and equestrian easement. I'm one of those people that actually have ridden on Okeechobee up and down, and I've ponied another horse with it. As you know, on SR80, on F Road, the light will have that button to cross. So if you know a little bit of what G Square looks like, you know, you've got Red Barn right there. What place is that? Horse Place. If you go down, you can actually, when you then have that light, and by coincidentally back to that SR80 presentation, George Webb, I overheard him mentioning that most likely they will put a light there, even though it is not desired the distance to the school. That you would cross over not only necessarily to Folsom, but you could cross going north and go into that dirt road and up to everywhere else. So it is a point of possible connectivity. And we should not do away with that. We should protect the space whenever we are able to, and not give it away. Okay? Now, I'm a little disappointed in reference to how should it be constructed. It's quite simple. For now, it's a 12-foot grassy area that's somewhat level. Yes, it's not that hard. In reference to the FAR increase, I think there goes that green space. That looks like that's going to be the next building if we ever do have an FAR increase. I also feel that the green space is a bit disconnected. If we really wanted to use it well, we would have a legal parking area in between. You seem to have right now the possibility of people cutting through from Okeechobee to avoid the light and the school, right through the parking lot and out Folsom. Okay? If the county wants to take Folsom off the thoroughfare map, great. The less roads we have on the thoroughfare map, they're in our town, the way I do it. Connectivity to the Red Barn, right now, the way it stands, where you're proposing that cut-through is also where you're running down and bringing around the loop for your Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it will be. I mean, I have concerns about how many drive-throughs we have and what they are and how they're designed and how much traffic they bring. I understand it's been part of the settlement, but let's do it smart. I do agree taking it back from the road might help, and don't have that traffic collide with the interconnected traffic if that's what we want. And I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lawrence Corning?
Lawrence Corning, Key Road. I think one thing to consider is anyone sitting on a board really has to try to ascertain what the people want. Certainly the majority of what the people want, and try to do that for them. And I don't really know too many issues that are more demanded than these horse trails. And I know our planning board has consistently tried to work these trails into every plan. Certainly you're going to see with Big Dock, hopefully that doesn't happen with the Big Dock thing, because that came up there as well. And I want to remind you that you're going to be seeing this Okeechobee plan maybe this evening. And it's all very interconnected. And a lot of planning you really have to do in advance so that it's ready to receive what it is you're trying to do. You know how complicated it's been for you to work with the water control and do all the things, bring it to the state and pass it. So it's part of our job to make sure it's there for you when you're done working through all these hard details. So, and I must have missed something, because in the joint meeting and the individual planning meeting, I seem to have missed the point that it really wasn't available because it wasn't in the settlement discussion. I don't know how I missed that one, but it didn't seem to come up, and we were ardently trying to make sure it was being put on there. And they even discussed maybe taking the trail up that western side. We also covered Dunkin' Donuts. We brought up the one on Forest Hill and the huge lines that you see. And we thought that really wasn't a great idea. But that's why you see this unbelievable arrow trail, follow the little Reese's Pieces till you get to the store. I mean, that line is the back line of cars. That's what that red line represents. That's why it's there. We messed around with it and got this long line there. And finally, the green space. Well, I think you know how to, are you smarter than a fifth grader? That would pop up as a future development site. I mean, Minto has sort of the same thing in their plan. Look to the big chunk to the west that we're dropping we're dropping how much we're going to build. And this is not set off, so you got to protect yourself. If our Okeechobee plan doesn't work, or something slips, that's going to go.
Thank you, Lawrence. Ken Johnson?
I have not been sworn in.
Do you swear affirm the statements or testimony you give this evening should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I did.
Thank you.
Ken Johnson, 15409 Collecting Canal Road. And I've got a couple of questions based on the presentation by the attorney for Mr. Day and Mr. Mayor, Council here. First of all, there seems to be some inconsistencies between what is being approved for this property versus the Simon property. Now, I could be wrong, but as an example, there was a lot of emphasis on the Simon property to have parking spaces for dually pickup trucks. I've heard nothing on this property about that. The only thing they said, well, their parking spaces were consistent with, I guess, the county's plan. Well, if you look at some of the newer parking places in the county, I mean, I can hardly, and my pickup truck's not a dually. It's hard for me to get into it. So why aren't they required to have dually parking spaces? The next thing, I see no turn lane coming into the restaurant that I don't think we need. The Red Barn has a turning lane. You go east on Okeechobee, and they've got a turning lane going into the Red Barn. Now, with all the additional traffic coming from Minto out west of us, why don't we have a turning lane? Now, if you look at the Shell station on State Route 80, they need a turning lane there too. Because look how many times problems occur with all of a sudden somebody decides to turn in the Shell station. We need a turning lane. The last item is, do we really need a fast food restaurant? I really don't think so. Thank you.
Keith Harris.
Then I've got Todd McClellan.
Keith Harris, 2580 C Road. I'd like to elaborate on a couple points of Dr. Nada and Ms. Corning. I want to point out that I was on the planning and zoning board and the RITAG committee and was part of the joint workshop on the site plan. It was shared with us in discussion that fast food restaurants will create somewhere between 500 to 600 road trips a day just for that restaurant. There's going to be a traffic quagmire there. There'll be help with the traffic light if Palm Beach County decides to bless us with one there, Okeechobee and Folsom. But to Dr. Lauda and Ms. Corning's comments on the trails, the desire of putting the trail across the front of the property in Okeechobee was to be for future connection to other properties along Okeechobee as they are developed or receive permits to do improvements. That is a normal fashion that municipalities use to get funded for improvement projects, i.e. water lines, sewer lines. Let's use it for a trail. If he does not want to put a trail, we'll get some impact fees for the future development of that trail. We also discussed the possibility of implementing the water district's easement there on the east side of the Folsom Canal. That would require crossings at Folsom up near Okeechobee. It also would require one down south near 6th Court Lane. We have looked at systems to do that. They run about $30,000 a crossing. People are worried about traffic. Any day between November 1st and April 1st, you go over to Wellington, the South Shore Boulevard, and Pearson Road, which is a major intersection in Wellington. Horses are crossing that every 10 to 15 minutes. Traffic, there's 3 lanes going north and south on South Shore, 2 lanes going east and west on Pearson. It would be a blessing to add that feature of the Folsom Trail to the town. It would allow a connection to go from Okeechobee down to Sixth Court, all the way back through town to the west end. There's a method to allow safe crossings. Town council has approved those crossings before at B&F roads. We were short-circuited in getting approvals from Palm Beach County to put those there, and they have since then turned around and denied us those. But if we can demonstrate, as was put to Mark Cutney and myself in a meeting, that could be achieved if we prove a need for it, and we can prove that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Todd?
Todd McLean, B Road. I've heard the settlement agreement come up several times tonight. I don't see it in the agenda package. It would have been nice to see what you guys agreed to before hearing from the public. Sounds like there's two council members up there that are very surprised as to what's in that agreement that you guys have already done. That's number one. Resolution 2008-02 is your cost recovery one. Section 2 states that an applicant requires final approval by the council. All outstanding payments shall be paid in full prior to the town council placing the application on the town council agenda for consideration. Why are we here tonight? It shouldn't even be on the agenda until it's paid. Thank you.
Thank you. And along that line, Todd, I was part of that negotiation, and honestly, I thought the negotiation was for the FAR and not the site plan, because the site plan was always going to come before this council later on in approving what it was. We brought up the need for something on traffic because of the location of the school. We didn't spell it out in that meeting. We were hammering out the FAR that we could live with on that property in that meeting, and that's the way I understood it. So I don't look at it as, well, we threw out the horse trail and we did everything else in that meeting. But that was for the FAR. But anyway, Mary, come on up.
Mary McNicholas, 12845 Raymond Drive. Couple of items that I wanted to bring up. Obviously, the connectivity, we've been doing this for a long time. The connectivity is an issue that was supposed to be resolved. We understood that it was supposed to be resolved. It was also, we have been meeting with the applicant and their counterparts, as well as Palm Beach County, to work on traffic calming on Folsom. One thing that I think that really needs to be addressed is that there really, I mean, kind of along the lines of what Councilman Rocket was saying earlier, I know that we're gonna have some kind of something at the intersection of Okeechobee and Folsom. I don't see anything in here that really shows that we're gonna have something traffic calming. We've been meeting with the county. We've been working on trying to get it off the thoroughfare map. Our commissioner, district commissioner, has absolutely been supportive of it. But there is definitely going to be an impact as far as the traffic from this center. The group has met with us, or we've been meeting with them, and I just don't see exactly where we have any commitment as far as additional help with either landscaping, traffic calming, anything along Folsom. The connectivity is not included. I've seen it in a lot of minutes and everything, but I haven't seen where there's any resolution of it. I too received a copy of the settlement agreement, and I honestly don't see where it says, that anything else can't be addressed. I'm not an attorney, but maybe our attorney can address that. We absolutely need to do more on the traffic calming, because obviously, if it's a cut through now, it's gonna be way worse of a cut through with that type of traffic. As far as the trail, first of all, I don't drink coffee and I don't ride my horse, or I don't ride a horse. But in deference to the community here, if there's anything that we can do, after Mr. Fleischman was talking about that the Rec Committee, sorry if I messed up that name, and also the P&Z Committee, if it was agreed to that easement would be in there, I think we need to bend over backwards and try to figure out how it can be done. That, along with the connectivity and the traffic calming, I think we've got one shot to make this right, or at least make it palatable on all sides. And I think that, that the applicant needs to come to the table with helping us as far as, making this happen.
Thank you, Mary. That's all the public comments I've got. What's the status? Go back to Jim, go back to the
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Hold on. All right, you gotta make sure I get over here. All right, Joe, go ahead. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Actually, most everything I wanted to speak about, oh, sorry, Joe Siciliano, 1530 B Road. Everybody really kind of covered all the points I was concerned with. But let me just say that I think that Mr. Day's attorney is going to use a word like warranted for a traffic light, because that's something that the county, he says, is willing to pay for. I think that it's something that we should consider for the traffic calming on Folsom and Okeechobee, that we stick with the roundabout. This is gonna be the entrance to Loxahatchee Groves. And it's something that could be easily divvied up in payment for by the town, by Mr. Day, by the school, and by the county. And something that isn't gonna be so cost prohibitive that we have to just suffer with another traffic light. Which, by the way, is probably not gonna help much, because all the entrances are, what, 150 meters further down the road than where that actual light is. We need to slow the traffic that continues on. And then as far as the horse trail goes, you know, I agree with everyone here before me that said, whether you call it a horse trail or whether you call it an easement, which is what most everything, I think in the area is being called, for the area where we want traffic that isn't a road to be. Mr. Day and his developers need to allow for a segment of his property to be deemed whatever we want it to be, and we're calling it a horse trail. It doesn't matter how it's built, it doesn't matter what the size, or, you know, if it's 12 feet, but it needs to be there, because in the future, for the development of Okeechobee down the line, if we don't set a precedent now, everybody's gonna be able to back out of a horse trail, any developer that comes along, because we let Mr. Day not do what we've asked him to do. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jim?
Yeah, I just had a couple responses to some of the comments and questions. Regarding the parking space issue, all of the parking spaces and the drive aisles meet code requirements. The width and the depth of the parking spaces and the width of the drive aisles meet the code requirements. The reason why some of the spaces in Loxahatchee Groves Commons were allowed to be smaller is that was a planned unit development. The PUD ordinance has the ability to apply for a waiver, and they asked for a waiver on the size of some of the parking spaces. This particular property is not large enough or located in the right place to go through the PUD process, so it had to comply with the code requirements. There is a summary of the key components of the settlement agreement in the staff report on page 47. And as far as connectivity, the discussions in the site plan approval process did not require that the issue be resolved as part of the site plan approval process. The requirement was that the applicant make every attempt to get together with the adjacent property owner to work out whether or not connectivity was feasible. Based on my contact with the adjacent property owner, that meeting and the ability to sit down and work out some kind of an agreement was not possible within the time frame of the approval process. But I do have a recommended condition of approval that we can add to the conditions that might help deal with this. And I sort of scribbled it together, and the wording probably can be changed a little bit, but what I have right now is connectivity with the property to the west shall continue to be pursued should a connectivity solution be arranged, any site plan revisions to accommodate connectivity may be accomplished administratively, which means that they wouldn't have to come back through the entire site plan approval process if the only change that they want to make to the site plan is some adjustments to the drive aisles to line up connectivity. And that they will be required to keep on working on the issue even beyond site plan approval. And let me see, that's all I have.
Okay. All right. First, Marty.
That's Marty Perry for the record. Unusual for me that I didn't hear pinch hitting. That's right, which is, I guess, appropriate now for particular athletic seasons. Sitting here listening to all this, and I was not present during the settlement discussions. I have read the settlement agreement, which is a one-pager that I'll be happy to share with Mr. McClendon if he wants to take a look at it before we leave tonight. But the issues that I've heard tonight that were of significance here, that were repeated over and over again, had to do with the equestrian trail in Joby, had to do with interconnectivity with the Red Barn, and if I've missed anything, those were the two most significant. The third one that arose was the concerns relative to the fast food restaurant in the northwest corner, and the fact that that corner initially was a potential site of interconnectivity, and that now that's a problem because of the drive-through in that area, and the additional concern that, well, we've now learned that it's going to be Dunkin' Donuts, and I confess I am a Dunkin' Donuts devotee. Again, I do see the sheriff's department at the one I go to on a regular basis. I don't throw my cups out the window, I don't throw my trash out the window, and I suspect that that's a problem that all communities have to deal with. It's just it's one of the facts of life. I don't care whether it's Dunkin' Donuts, it's McDonald's, or it's even Publix. You see plastic wrappers for Publix on the road. The reality is that people are going to throw things out, and we're going to be stuck with cleaning up after them. It's just the nature of life. Addressing these issues, right? Not having been there at the conclusion of the settlement when we reached that, and I understand there was a site plan there, and the site plan did show a fast food restaurant. You may not have thought that was the issue. It isn't specified in the language of the settlement agreement, but then you get to issues like the spirit of the settlement agreement. And not having been there, I'm not in a position to talk about that. If he wants. But the reality is that this project has a long, expensive history, and it's time to put it to bed. If the significant issue here tonight, and I understand it is, Mr. Corning's comment about Big Dog Ranch. I was here for Big Dog Ranch, and yes, Big Dog Ranch is providing an equestrian trail along Okeechobee. We have concerns about that equestrian trail. Mr. Day is not happy with it. We can stand here and we can argue against it from the standpoint of the settlement agreement. I'd like to put it to bed. If we can resolve that issue, that fast food restaurant needs to stay in that location. If you want an equestrian easement, if the town develops an ordinance and you do that, we'll provide that easement along there. We'll commit that. That's not a problem. We'll commit to that. That resolves it, in my mind, a very significant issue for the town. Now, granted, you don't have one across the Red Barn. I don't know what you're going to do to get there. That's going to require some cooperation that may or not be forthcoming, and then you've got a glitch here, and you truly do have an easement to nowhere because it doesn't go anywhere. You're not going to have horse trailers coming and parking in this particular site in order to get their horse out and ride along Okeechobee and then get back in your party. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but if you want it, we'll give it to you. If you can solve the rest of the problem, God bless you. The interconnectivity, we can't do anything if the other property owner doesn't cooperate with us.
I heard discussion, and the reality is that Folsom itself is a shortcut. People take Folsom, that's why Folsom is a problem. People shortcut down Folsom in order to avoid going all the way up, the other way up to Okeechobee, you know, this is what's happened, now you have a problem, and now you want traffic calming and everything, and it looks like the county is gonna give you a traffic light, we're gonna cooperate with them, they'll be able to put that in there. It also looks like the county is gonna give you Folsom Road, okay, so that they'll also put the traffic calming in. So I think that addresses those issues that were brought up. The actual configuration of the intersection, we don't know that at this point. I mean, that's going to be in your judgment if you end up with Folsom Road. You're also going to be looking at the maintenance of Folsom Road.
No, I think you just take it off the thoroughfare.
Okay, well,
Not-
fine. Well, then it's going to be the county that's going to decide that configuration, and we can't make that decision tonight. So notwithstanding Mary's comments, but the reality is that we can't deal with that. Mr. Day isn't creating the traffic problem on Folsom in the sense of what, it's a shortcut there already. If the county's gonna provide the traffic calming, that problem sort of gets solved. Okay? So I don't see a problem there. Interconnectivity, I can agree with the condition that's been proposed by Mr. Fleischman relative to continuing to work to do that. But the reality is, it just seems to me, looking at this, and I'm not an engineer and I'm not a traffic planner, but I've been doing this long enough, that it seems to me that direct route across there for interconnectivity is a hell of a lot better than a circuitous route through there. And it's just common sense here. So I suggest that, you know, you proceed and you go forward. We'll make those agreements with you. Let's get this over with. Thank you.
All right, what's our next step?
Well, at this point, you turn it over to you all to deliberate and make a decision. I'd like to say a couple things on, been mentioned tonight on the legal side, if that's appropriate at this time. You know, my conversation with Mr. Day's attorney, they do have a view that resolution that the town had with them did not include an additional, what they would call dedication. It's an easement, you know, so therefore it's not consistent with it. And whether we agree with that or we disagree with that, that was the position that was articulated to me. So, you know, the other concern that I have with it, and Mr. Perry just touched on it, is we don't have a specific ordinance now requiring it. And the concern is that you pose a condition that an applicant may not agree to, would not be well received perhaps if it was challenged. That's not in your code. I thought I heard Mr. Perry say that there is some accommodation that can be made. Maybe you can clarify that, so we don't run into any issues if there's going to be discussion on the horse trail by the council. But it is not really a settlement agreement issue. It more has to do with what we have in our code and a concern about extracting something perhaps that's not required at this point in time. Doesn't have any, maybe be used in the future, but not have any current purpose or service to the property. So that's more where I would look at it from a legal sense than the settlement agreement. But I just offer that comment to you for that.
Okay, council members. Comments?
Mr. Mayor,
I'll start. Okay.
I like a fast food restaurant, but I'd really like us to better understand what our commitment was made in our settlement on fast food restaurant, whether it is definite. And if we were to disagree with the fast food restaurant, we would put ourselves back in court. I'd like to know that, one. Two, this Trail of Nowhere, it seems like it's well labeled. I understand what we're talking about, but also, it seems like most people that are here, as I recall, seem to expect Okeechobee to go to 4 lanes. You get a 12-foot easement on the side of their property at the intersection of Folsom and Okie, and then somebody comes along, being the county, and says, all right, now we have 4 lanes. That seems like that 12-foot easement is going to be part of the 4 lanes, and we've lost it. What to me is maybe a better strategy in terms of planning is to say, we know we at least have had the consideration from the county that we'll be party to planning process of 4 lanes. And we've had a lot of conversation about we would want some kind of turn lane in the middle, we'd like some green areas on the sides and so on, and landscaping probably way down the list, but that's going to be key also. To me, a horse trail along Okeechobee falls in that discussion, where you can go from one end of Okeechobee within Loxahatchee Groves to the other end, and everything is handled in that particular discussion. Because otherwise, we're doing piecemeal things now. Weatherby today is and his advisors are agreed to 12 foot. I think it's a little bit like the saying where you get sleeves out of your vest. There are no sleeves in the vest. You give you 12 foot, and the county comes along and says, oh, well, we want to use that for 4 lanes. It's gone. So I think, I don't see that it's worth arguing about the 12 foot equestrian trail unless I can address the entire Okeechobee Trail. The interconnectivity with Red Barn, it seems like that's something I understand what they're saying. If we get Red Barn to the table and discuss it, they're willing to make that happen. Whether it's more for Red Barn or not, it may be that Mr. Perry will pull in there and get his donut and then go over to Red Barn and buy something over there. But I might meet you at Dunkin' Donuts if it was there, but I'm really a hang up with, I don't ever recall any conversation, and as such a hot button item as a drive-through restaurant, and all the attention it gets all around this county, that it was never mentioned in any of our conversations when we talked about zoning, because I agree with the mayor, our focus was very different. So I'd like to know if that's something we have to approve or we're back in court. Simply, I guess, is that.
Yeah.
And my other comment on the trail concluded.
Well, my view on that, again, it's not a specific item that, we put pen to paper to. When you approve, and I don't have it in front of me that Jim can clarify, when you approve the comprehensive plan and the rezoning, was part of the master plan, or at least the conceptual plan that was part of those applications. The other thing to keep in mind is that, as has been with your comp plan and your zoning, that is a permitted use in the district. And so, with that's a permitted use and all the other plannings meet code under a site plan analysis, that's not allowing that would be challengeable.
Jim? Yeah, when the property came through for rezoning, one of the requirements that included a master plan, and the fast food restaurant was on the master plan at the time of the rezoning. So the site plan is consistent with the master plan that was included with the rezoning.
Did you tell him?
Brian, anybody who's taking it?
I'm, despite how some people might feel, but I'm not against the fast food restaurant. The only reason why is like how Mike mentioned, it is a permitted use, and whatever's permitted under that use, I'm fine with, because, it's obviously in the permitted use. But one thing I do think we need to keep is the horse trail, because, the properties on the southern and B Road, there's no horse trail there to connect to right now. So that argument is moot about there isn't any connection to horse trail. Who knows down the road, they most probably would be. And I would think that, having a horse trail there and the Red Barn and in Dunkin' Donuts, that might give an excuse for an equestrians to, hey, I gotta go to Red Barn. I'm gonna stop by Dunkin' Donuts and, I'm gonna ride my horse. Everyone, looks for an excuse. When I used to have a bike, I would look for an excuse to ride. And, having Dunkin' Donuts and a Red Barn would be a good excuse for someone to go ride their horse, hitch it up, pick up something from Red Barn, pick up a donut and a coffee and ride back. I could see that happening all the time. And other than that, I'm fine with everything else. But I think you do have to keep the equestrian trail on it.
Okay, Ron?
I believe Marty said the equestrian trail will be kept on there. There's no doubt in my mind, we don't have to worry about Dunkin' Donuts going out of business. You know, some of the comments we've made since we started this and with the commercial is, why do we need it in our town? You know, everybody else is empty, vacant. Well, you don't see any Dunkin' Donuts vacant. It's a business that'll bring in revenue. It's a business that most of us will probably stop by there instead of going to Royal Palm Beach or up at 441 in Okeechobee. The biggest thing is I'd like to see it where we can get moving on the red light and the common devices. And if the county warrants it, then hopefully we can continue meeting, and as this project progresses, then we can progress with the red light and with the common devices. I do believe the equestrian trail will be a trail to nowhere, but the one comment was that if we don't start putting it in when the developers come in, then we're losing out. Now the chances of an equestrian trail on Okeechobee Boulevard is a better chance on the north side and the south side. Most of you are good friends of Beck Hislop. Okay, maybe Beck will dedicate 12 feet in front of his property to coincide with Mr. Day's as an equestrian trail. So maybe you can start working on that. But no, our P&Z has approved this. Town planner has approved it. We don't need to be going back to court, wasting more money. That's it.
Most of the complaints, other than the one relative to the horse trail, and I guess even that, it's all part of what is allowed in our code. And the real issue is not one where it's Mr. Day's fault in any way. It's our code's fault if the code allows him to do what he wants to do. And I'm not even saying that the word fault is the proper word, because business is not a bad thing. And if you're going to have a Dunkin' Donuts, it's probably the best spot in the whole Okeechobee Road, because everybody's going through there. They're going to pull off on the way in on the east, and they're going to pull back on, and they're going to be going through Royal Palm Beach. It's got to be somewhere. And unless we are really going to take a totally anti-developmental attitude and ban development and ban everything and call up Commissioner McKinley and say, we will not accept 4 lanes ever for Okeechobee. And until you really get all those things, you're not going to have anything, and you're just going to fight these battles, and people are going to be disappointed and feel like we're not doing our job. But the problem is that all these things are allowed, and we are doing our job. They've asked us, can we submit an application according to your rules? And they did. And we look at that, and for whatever reason, the first time, and I wasn't here that night, it was voted against, and we went to court for 3 years. And now here we are back again. Some people think we got less than, or a lesser plan this time around than we got before. I heard a similar comment when we got to the thing about the college and that property, and how maybe we should have gone with one of the interim plans that people had come along. I am not a socialist, and I do not believe that I can design these projects better than they can. I am not the person who should decide what kind of businesses should and shouldn't exist in our town. If you don't want development, then we need to really look at that legally and see if it can be done, and if so, stop it. But I don't think it's possible. And much as everyone would like Okeechobee to stay a dirt road, when it got paved the first time was the end of that. I owned property on Okeechobee in 1996, and when I bought that property, they were telling me about the great potentials that I could find if I was to buy that property. I never, ever got anything out of that potentiality other than a little bit of profit when the next guy bought it looking for potentiality. And he's still got the same trees that I had planted there in 2002 on that same exact property. So he didn't really do a good deal. And anybody else who's buying it for that future, they could have a problem, and they could also wait 15 years or 30 years to make their money back. So I just don't think that we need to, every time somebody comes here asking for us to do what our rules say they can do, act like they're a bad person. We need to change the rules if we want to change the rules. And when we do, make sure everybody knows it and do it in a proper way so that people understand what's going on. Or else quit acting like they're wrong for doing what they're allowed to do. It's really crazy, because then folks in town come here and act like we're not doing our job. What are you doing? You're selling me down the river. I heard him say that to Ron over the big dog thing. He didn't sell him down the river. He did his job. People need to understand that. And if you want the rules changed, that's what y'all need to come here and talk about, changing those rules. And go to the P&Z meetings so there's not three people sitting there talking to each other. Because that's what goes on. Yeah. Because nobody's there to give them any input. And they go and they talk to each other and they work it out. But y'all should have been there when they were making the list that allowed Big Dog and that allowed this, if you cared. And that's what I have to say.
Okay. When I look at when I look at your site, it looks like you've got a pretty good setback. I mean, looking at that right now, I can see where a person could ride a horse around the perimeter of that property on that grassy area. Now, I know right now along the Okeechobee, the only place to ride is the grassy areas along the canal that are there. But Okeechobee and all that's going to change. I don't know that I would want to ride a horse there. I mean, I can understand what they say about a trail to nowhere. This is the corner property of our town. You've got Bryan Road over there. You've got, other stuff just to the west. I mean, I would love to have as much interconnectivity as possible. I cannot imagine anybody riding down Folsom where it just goes from Okeechobee to Southern and back on top of that canal. I mean, maybe some of the people want to get their horse over there and ride it. We've got a school there, we've got everything else. I think a traffic light there is the only thing that'll work. A roundabout to me, I've said it before, I want input on Okeechobee, I want a wide median, I want 10-foot lanes, but I don't think there's anything we can do to stop it going to 4 lanes. It's a county road. We've got to make the best we can do. I don't personally like a fast food restaurant there because of the trash. But at the same time, if our codes right now, make it that way, there's really not a whole lot we can do about it. That's one of the reasons, one of the next agenda items is regarding what is going to happen on Okeechobee. And it's important for the future of our town. In the negotiation with Mr. Day, we really weren't against the commercial. We understood commercial was going to be there. But we were able to reduce it by 13,000 square feet of commercial, of retail or whatever. So I think that was a win for the town. At the same time, it is a commercial corner in our town. So while we might not like everything on it, I would like to see the possibility of a horse trail. All the buildings are set back far enough that there would be access around that edge if later on. But I also know we do not have any kind of code saying you have to put horse trails in there. So that's where we're at. Anyway. All right. Any other comments by council members? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, there was at least some conversation about, let's clarify exactly what the comments were made about 14 to 12-foot easement, I think.
Right. Maybe the applicant or the attorney can clarify,
or just
restate the position or restate that they'd be willing to propose or something for the horse trail.
The other question I
just want to have it on the record.
The other question, Mike, was, is there, can we tie the light, functioning light to certificate of occupancy?
I don't believe you can, because the CO is a think it's a building issue.
Okay.
And we wouldn't have control of when that light goes up.
Okay, and I know the applicant can't control what the county does, but there's like your priority list of things to do. If we can help you prioritize higher to get the county to move forward on that, because I would think that we would work with the counties in discussion with that ready to make that happen as quickly as possible. So from our perspective, we want it in before you have buildings. But if you can, I don't know how it would work, if you can assist where we go forward.
The key, Mr. Rock, is really, as has been pointed out earlier in this discussion, the key really is Commissioner Tinley. She's your district commissioner, and we will be happy to work with Commissioner Tinley as well as with your staff and your council in terms of impressing on her the need to move that quickly, because left to the county engineer's devices to drag a little bit, but she can push it.
Well, being that one of the things that I like about Waxahachie Groves, we're still a large farming community, and we still have the handshakes and people's word, so I'll take you at your word on it.
I was standing there saying, I think I'm one of the few people out here that has reached out for interconnectivity of equestrian trails, including an equestrian trail over Collecting Canal from the Groves Town Center project, which is going to be built. It's going to give you probably more connectivity than you had relative to your equestrian trails. It was brought up by somebody, I think, in the Councilman Manning mentioned a comment about the B road and equestrian trails, but you're looking at something that's going to be fairly impressive down there.
Right. I understand.
Mr. Fleischman has drafted some language which I have no objection to relative to the equestrian trail.
Okay.
You can just read that.
Yeah.
On page 68 of your agenda pack, that's where the conditions of approval start. I'm suggesting that we add under general conditions, condition number 7, a 12-foot easement for horse trail shall be granted by the applicant along the Okeechobee Boulevard property frontage. And then I had previously mentioned a condition on page 69 under engineering, condition number 3. Connectivity with the property to the west shall continue to be pursued. Should a connectivity solution be arranged, any site plan revisions to accommodate connectivity may be accomplished administratively.
And we agree to that also.
Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. Yeah.
Second.
Second, with those two additional, so they're not the original recommended conditions.
Made and one minor correction to the entrance from southern.
Okay. Quasi-judicial roll call vote.
So I need to read the resolution. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Waxahachie Groves Board of Appeals today, property site plan for land owned by Willie H. and J.T. Day, consisting of 9.3 acres more or less, located at the southwest corner of Okeechobee Boulevard and Folsom Road, Waxahachie Groves Board. We describe the specific date of this resolution, finding suitability, conflicts, and effective date.
All right. We have a motion and we have a second. Roll call vote.
Mayor Brown,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Darrell,
Yes.
Councilman Goldston,
Yes.
Councilman Rocket,
Yes.
Councilman Leeang.
All right. Let's take a real quick break and then we'll come back and finish up our stuff.
Are you having fun? Yes, I am.
Are you leaving?
No, but how many?
Works for the town, not for us.
They can't say that. No, they never are. They have till 10:30 to go. They have actually till 10:30 to go. It's gonna get out earlier tonight, but they can go that late. If you need to go, go. You got the kids, trying to get things done with them. Oh, I got to go to the dogs and the toys.
No, not now, no.
Way back, you mean where the ordinance are
Yes, you can. Listen, I'm telling you what. Yeah, but you're allowed to have that. Yes, you can. I'm telling you, yes, you can. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, it's flashing. Yeah, it's flashing.
Everybody take a seat. All right, we're moving to the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, just very glad to tell you that the joint committee which you were at, meeting between the supervisor and the council, agreed to move the ILA forward, and I'm trusting that this will be the last time you see it on the report, except that it's been done. Relative to Minto, have not moved forward with that activity at the present time, still reviewing. On the day property that was tonight, you finished with that. The Angela Henderson Sandoval with the South Florida Water Management still has not gotten back to me relative to the road and swales on 43rd. Hopefully I'll have a response soon. The speed humps, still don't have the definitive answer on the speed humps. I do have, with the building, I would like to make the announcement now that the town hall ribbon cutting dedication ceremony will be Saturday, June 13th, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And of course, the residents are invited. The staff is working on 1666C Road, unauthorized living structures, completing a very extensive public records request that has taken quite some time to put together. Finally, law enforcement, PBSO, is working with staff. We're going to be putting some advertisements together on the town's website relative to gathering 30 full-time residents to be part of the Citizen on Patrol program. I think it'll be a great program. I've seen it work in other places, and it should be good here, assuming we get to 30 people. Finally, what I did want to, I'll reiterate one more time, the thanks to Commissioner McKinley. She offered the motion to take the Folsom Road off of the thoroughfare plan. It was approved. It's supported by staff. I was trying to get some definitive dates on when traffic calming and some other issues could occur on Folsom. I got the indication that it would be probably 2016 before the comp plan actually was amended. And then somewhere during after that, they would have to appropriate the funds for the traffic calming and the light. So I'm thinking 2017, somewhere in that. That's the end of my report, sir.
Okay. Any questions for the manager?
Question. A recent email relative to using an old, the old contract that we said pick the second or third bidder on having the maintenance of brush maintenance, etc. We're not moving forward with that document, I hope.
I actually sent that question to the attorney, and we're preparing actually to take the RFP that we originally had out, tweak it, correct it, and put it back out on the street and try to have a new bid to you in the not too distant future.
You need to do more than just tweaking. You know, what we had before might have been a good base, but you need to do you need to get quotes by road. You can't be doing this as far as worried about, somebody comes in, the job is to clear it, and that's the only thing we pay for. We don't have to pay for by ton or by cubic yard or any of that other stuff. It's just come in, do the job, and when you're done, that's when you get one bill for doing that road. Simple as that, but you gotta put it in an RFP.
Right, and you don't do it road by road.
You can do it road by road or by road mile.
I understand.
You can't do it the way we did it, is what I'm saying, so
Well,
don't
and you
try to use that
can't,
thing.
you cannot do it road by road because it's the same project, just at a different location. You would be stacking the work, so you would bid the entire town.
Yes, you would bid the entire town, but don't bid the entire town the way we did it before. You can't tweak that. It needs to be thrown out and come up with something less crazy, but as far as detail and more general, but just, this is your job. You get down this road, you clear it, I pay you to do that. I'm not gonna pay you piecemeal, like how much you take away, and what the sizes and all of the shapes and so.
We did get some feedback when we had from the OIG on this particular procurement, so we can go back and look at that too, and their comments and suggestions for redoing it.
Bill, can I get a copy of that original contract from you again? And I'll get it back to you, Mark. I came by to get it, I didn't get a chance to ask you for it.
Okay. Okay, Ron?
All right, since we're talking about hedging, Bill, you said hopefully by July we can have an RFP out. Now, first of all, it's got to be by the hour. One road may be worse than the next. You can't bid this whole town as far as hedging goes. And we've come to an agreement, I believe you and Steve, but you realize that we won't be hauling it off. You hedge it, you mulch it, it stays there, it kills the grass, and that's the way it works. So you're aware of all that, and you are aware of the problems we had before. Now, since we're talking about hedging, I believe this council had a consensus back when Mark was here that since it was taking us so long to do another RFP, that we were going to work with the water control district, and if they were available, and I believe they charged us $50 an hour, but we were going to work with them and let them continue doing the hedges until we got an RFP going. Now, I hope somebody on this council remembers that, because the hedging is getting worse, and we don't have anybody to do it. I put in a request for 161st. There's other roads out here that need to be hedged, and it would never even get close to our procurement policy. So I'm asking the council now, do we not come to a consensus that until this RFP gets here, we're going to take care of the people by hedging their roads if it's needed?
I would rather see Choquette's machinery do the work like they did on Compton and that result than just the district using their side mower and breaking it again because they broke it several times. I don't really think they appreciate using it. I mean, I could be wrong, but according to Frank, they don't like using it because it breaks. And it's not designed for that. They use something designed for a bigger, bigger. And, Jim used the word clearing. We have to decide what we want to do. Hedging denotes that we're just going to trim it back a little bit. I sort of like Jim's idea that it's cleared where it's actually put back and done. And maybe it would be a better attempt to pick particular roads and go in and clean them back so they're done and done. And then the next year go and do some other roads so that they're done. Versus a continuous maintenance with a mower that really isn't doing much because we're not really attacking the problem. And I think we're going to find that over a few years of trimming back the peppers, they're going to get so thick they're not going to want to be trimmed back anymore. And then you're going to have either really woody looking nastiness or you're going to have just problems upon problems. I've noticed when we hedge that whatever we hedge off, the branches that are behind it held up by the stuff that was there fall out right after. I mean, I've actually driven behind and seen it falling out behind the guy when he's hedging. 5 minutes later, literally, we got this stuff hanging in the road. I don't think it's the ultimate solution to what we ought to do. And somebody ought to get in there. And I know I was on 161st today. There's spots where there's big peppers right by rocks, that for whatever reason, when they went through and did it before, they were afraid of hitting the rocks, so they didn't use their thing, and now there's these giant peppers growing. And whereas it does look great for 95% of the piece, then you got this big old pepper thing that you know is just gonna become a problem, climb out in the road. I think we need to address it a little bit differently than just hold it back like that, which is all really the district does.
Okay, Ron?
Anybody else want to speak? Want to speak?
I will let you speak.
John Choquette, to do what he does, he serves a purpose, okay? First of all, and me and Bill took a ride along with me and Steve Yohe, but John Choquette's machine takes it down to the ground. It'll chew a tree up, so when we need something cleared, we use his machine. The only difference is it costs $200 an hour and not $50 an hour. Now, when we bring this down to the ground, our biggest problem with this town is we do things, but we don't follow a maintenance program. We want to forget about it until we have to get John Choquette to come back in for $200. But the Water Control District machine will do up to 4-inch limbs, okay? Now, I don't care what they said about Compton Road breaking down or whatever, okay? They did something wrong, plus that one machine they were having trouble with the warranty, and they had the people come back numerous times to fix the machine. So no, we need to maintain what we do in this town, and 161st and numerous other roads can be hedged by the Water Control District equipment for $50. And we've got a town manager that can go out there along with the district administrator, and if they don't think their equipment can do it, then we can get John Choquette. Now, right now, we were going to get him for 161st, but his equipment is broke down. So what do? We wait on the man to get his equipment fixed, or do we go ahead and maintain the roads like we're supposed to? So no, I'd like for us to have a consensus that we direct our town manager, and I spoke with Steve Yohe today. He does not have a problem hedging the roads. All he needs is permission requests from the town office.
Okay. Jim?
I want to belabor this, but you don't do this by an hour. You don't do this by the hour. If somebody likes to calculate what they will clear a road by using an hourly calculation, that's fine. But I'll give you $10 an hour, and I'll take 3,000 hours to do a job that takes 2 hours, and you're not going to get there. So we need to be a little smarter with what we do in terms of that. I understand we have resources available. There could be a temporary fix to give us something to fill in while we do an official RFP. I think that's something the council can consider, certainly. And we have a couple of sources to look at. One that takes it down to nothing, and you don't get in its way because you won't ever see the light of day again. And what the Water Control District has. So I guess we could talk about that as an interim to get them to step up, to take some care of something, because it's going to be a small, interim costs are going to be small as far as any outlay in procurement, and then we're looking for and Ron made a good point, we need a plan that, once we get, especially if you can cut it down to the ground to come back. There are some products out there that we can spray, there are some products out there you can actually paint on some of the remaining stumps, and they will die and won't come back like pepper and a lot of other things they'll come back no matter what you do. You can cut them all day, but you can also apply something to kill them. But I'll get that RFP from you, and I'll get you something back. Bill, if you could send it to me, it'd be great, because that's easier for me to move it around and give you an idea of what maybe that contract should ask about as far as RFP.
Okay. Got one public comment, Ken Johnson.
Mr. Mayor and Town Council, how do we go about requesting that some items not be hedged? In other words, I'm trying to grow palm trees across the front of my property. Well, bingo, here comes a hedger. But yet again, at the other end of Collecting Canal in C Road, they've got a hedge that comes into the road that limits traffic to basically one lane. Well, they didn't do anything, huh? So, I meant, you know, and then plus when they did hedge it, all the debris lands on my grass and kills the grass. I'm trying to grow grass there too. My neighbor at B Road in Collecting Canal, his hedge is recessed, and he's got nice grass there, nice hedge. I'm trying to keep up with him. Hell, I can't get there. Thank you.
Bill, I got an answer for you. Call Steve Yoy tomorrow and tell him you don't want your palm trees cut, okay? Now, hey, if your palm trees are out in the road, okay, well, no, then you call him tomorrow and he'll take care of it. He'll make sure it doesn't happen again. It's that simple. Okay, now, you got down the street where you say you can't see to get out and stuff. While you talking to him, tell him also that down the road, we can't see to get into the road. Why aren't you hedging that? Give him an address and he'll probably take care of that problem too.
Okay, moving to 10A, new business. Yes,
Before we get there, Mayor,
okay.
there were two other things I wanted to get clarification. One was, there was discussion earlier brought up about dealing with the district on watering roads, town roads. I'm looking for, what is it, do you want me to meet with the district administrator, determine what the cost is, per foot, per row, I don't know, but I'm looking for direction. It was brought up, but I have not received direction from the council.
Okay, I would always almost think the watering is kind of along with the grading. The grading that we set up for these town roads that are not district roads. So to me, the watering would go along with that. If there's a need to do that, then we just need to schedule that, pay for it accordingly, and get it done. That would be my
That
thought.
motion?
Well, it will be, but I got to get something for that. They, like I said, they did a trial run on the 161st. They know it took 2 hours. So basically, they should be able, Bill should be able to get with Steve and he should have a price quote for it. But Bill's right about one thing. When you grade, we get our road graded every Friday, all right? Now, last Friday, they graded the road, and when it's a dust bowl, it's like wasting your time, okay? So their policy with the district is if they they water the road either before or after they grade it, right behind it or in front of it, and that way it keeps that road stable a lot longer. But now we got places like Keith was saying where you may have a dust bowl and the rain don't seem to be coming. If people call and say, man, I'm getting eat up by the dust because of the traffic and stuff, and the kids are waiting for the bus, can you please water our road? Then we should be able to afford to work with the district and have them go out and water that road if they're available. So that's the way I'd like to leave it up to the town manager and let him handle it with the district administrator.
Okay, gonna make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we turn the watering over to the town manager so he can work with the district administrator and we can keep the roads watered.
What I would like
We
to.
need it.
I'm good, I would like to incorporate the attorney with that and draft just a real quick little agreement with them relative to that provision of service.
Roger, all right with that?
Oh, yeah.
Your second by Ryan.
Letter agreement on that?
Letter agreement would be fine.
Further discussion?
Can we have it, but can you go down this path again on a temporary basis, and then you put out a request for a quote for pricing, which there's only gonna be one respondent really that can do it, but still to try to do this as a stopgap and then formalize it along the lines of our agreement with whomever, be it the district in some future date. But the other thing, caution you about, I don't necessarily want my road watered, ever.
And don't call for the request.
But that's not what we told them. So if it should be on
Right, I think as requested by people, just like the grading.
Don't tell them you don't. The grading's not done that way.
We do grading, watering every day.
Okay.
All the town roads are graded every month.
What is sprinkler on there?
You know, you get 3 or 4 requests per road.
That's fine. All right, that's number one, that was approved.
But we have a motion and a second for further discussion. I've got one comment card. Who's that, Lawrence?
That's 10A.
Oh, 10A, okay, never mind. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Okay, now we're moving to 10A.
Commissioner,
Bill?
is this something we should consider with a little bit more timeliness? It's getting to be late, the issues relative to the district's agreement, which I would think is more pressing and something we'd like to get done tonight.
The only concern I've got is we've got basically a moratorium that goes through May. We now don't have a meeting until June 16th. So theoretically, I don't know what happens to this gap. I think what I'm hoping this will do will simplify what goes on in the future as far as development on Okeechobee, is my thought. Now, I don't want to push it off very far because of the moratorium.
No, I'm okay with that. And if there's something we can do with zoning in progress or an extension of the moratorium, but I really don't want to impose a bunch of new regulations on people with less than an hour to discuss it, and no one here.
Well, this is,
Here we go again, really. Nobody's here. We're gonna go ahead and approve. Sorry about that, folks. But, yeah, the important ones are here. I included myself in the nobody, so. But, people are gonna wanna know, I would think that if this is so important, that they're gonna wanna be here for it. I could be wrong. But I had a lot of people looking up at me tonight, looking like we were doing something wrong with this day property thing. That I wish they'd spent more time and stayed around for this.
Because this is really the future.
This is the whole thing, and we're just gonna pick that and do it in half an hour. I mean, I don't think that's right.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may suggest a little bit along the lines of what Tom said, if we can skip to 10, to 11, and come back to 10A. Understanding if we do cancel our meeting, we have done for June 2nd, we can extend tonight with the majority of the council, or a little longer tonight. I know it's late, and I appreciate that. But if we can get the things done, and get the grant application discussion over, and let's deal with the ILA specifically, and get that done, which I think we're ready to approve. Those things have to be done. Let's come back and next, after that, talk about 10A a little, and give us the time. That ends the night. We just finish that up. But flip the order a little bit if we could.
Okay. I don't know what we're going to be gained, but Bill?
We've had some discussion, Mike, myself, and Jim, relative, because we do believe we probably need to extend the moratorium for a short period of time. And the attorney has some recommendation relative to getting that done so that everybody's not pushed
Okay.
right now.
you could take advantage of one of two things. If you give us direction tonight to bring back a first reading and extension of the moratorium, if you're not prepared to give direction to bring this proposal back for a transmittal hearing, I guess is the first one, because our code provides also that once it's noticed for public hearing, that we have 6 months to adopt it, and we withhold permits unless they comply with what's proposed. So, the lateness of the hour aside, if the council had been prepared to say, after discussing this, yes, bring this back to us for the first hearing on June 16th, we could go ahead and notice that hearing, but I've been told now we can't do that. So, by Jim, so the alternative would be to give us direction to bring back on June 16th a moratorium to confirm, an ordinance to confirm that the moratorium is extended. You do that tonight, you're still within the moratorium, you're giving us direction to do that, to extend the moratorium.
That's fine. This is an important document. I mean, if this had been in place, we wouldn't have had to have the negotiation and spend all that time and money. We could put in things like, we don't want drive-throughs, or we don't want things like that. That's what needs to be in this document. because everybody agreed, all the way back to the neighborhood plan, it was low impact, non-residential.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, according to that, a Duncan does not fit, but somehow we did not set up our codes as smart as we could have to eliminate what we didn't want. So, you know, bad on us. Jim?
Mayor, we're not asking that you to approve anything tonight. If I can just take a couple minutes and explain what we've done. The local planning agency, the P&Z, has met 9 times on this subject since December. Most of the meetings have been workshops where we spent at least 3 hours per workshop specifically on this. And they got it to the point where they asked staff to bring it back to the council to see if we were on the right page, if the direction that's taken by this is correct. And they're asking for direction from the council. If you're saying this is the direction that we want to go, we have to take it back to the LPA and go through the comprehensive plan amendment process, which requires 3 public hearings, 1 at the LPA, 2 at the council, and then a 30-day review period up at the state. So all we're asking at this point is to take a look at this and see, are we way off base? Is this the direction that you want us to go? Because the LPA itself even wants to refine this more. That's why at their last meeting, they didn't pass a recommendation for approval. They just by consensus said, let the council see it, see if we're on the right track, and if we are, bring it back, and then we'll take it through the amendment process, which still requires 3 public hearings and a lot more review. So we're not asking you for an up or down tonight. Based on what's in here, is this a document that is worth proceeding? That's all.
Sure. Okay, and Jim, go ahead. I got a question right up front. If I look at our chart, which is all the box chart early in the package, and it says, here's our maximum floor area ratio.
Right.
And I put on the top of that column, 0.074. And every number below that's greater. Explain that to me, because I'm missing something here.
Okay, well this, the table that starts on page 80 of 96, that's the land use categories that are currently in our comprehensive plan. Okay.
So everything that goes, everything in that all those categories has to come down.
That would exist, well, it is. If you look at the second page, if you look at page 81, the very last row, we're adding a new overlay land use category specifically to Okeechobee. And we're calling that land use overlay the Okeechobee Rural 5 overlay. And if you look in the column where it talks about floor area ratios, it refers the reader to objective 1.16. 1.16 is what we've written here, where the maximum FAR on the category is 0.05.
Okay.
So all of the land use categories that are listed on pages 80 and 81, above the Okeechobee Rural 5, those are FARs that apply to the rest of the town. And we're coming up with new categories specifically for Okeechobee Boulevard that, and we've identified specific uses that we want to see. We've identified types of non-residential activities, and we've identified floor area ratios.
Not to exceed a 0.05.
I guess I guess maybe that's really my question, that's my point. What I have is a chart, this is what we've got, and I've got a bottom line that says, we have referred object 1.16. And now you're telling me, well, 0.05 is somewhere, but boy, it's not, don't find out at me, why don't we put that, I mean, why don't I just put that here?
Because we have different types of non-residential use that.
But you say they all have to fall equal or less than 0.05?
The maximum that can occur in the individual small business is 0.05.
Okay.
We have another category that they can't exceed 0.025. So we have certain uses that can come in at 0.05, other uses can be only at 0.05.
I got it.
Yeah. Okay, so
What I'm saying, on that last, Okeechobee Rural 5 should say just that. Max, all categories, 0.05. See specific category to find out what the specifics are.
Well, that's essentially what I'm doing, what I'm saying.
But it's not clear on the chart, is all I'm saying. I mean, I've got to dig for this stuff. I've got to go through here and find each individual category. I've got to find out you're presenting, Jim, what I'm saying, you're presenting the old, and then we bury the new. I mean, this is like, like the first chart. All the old ones, but the new one's gonna be equal or less than 0.5. Now, let me take you through the specific categories. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, I think we can do that. It's a question of format. Basically.
Format and presentation, I'm sorry. I gotta hit rabbit funk what you're doing, and then let's take you to the specifics. I understand the reference, but I get 2 pages of old and one bottom line that's, like a half-inch tall, and we don't tell me what we're gonna go to. That's all. So we ought to make that point, and then let's get into the specifics as to, because I gotta go to B, what is it, 1174, whatever. I'm gonna get way down into the details to find that answer, and it should be right up front. And then you take me there later.
And it's even hard to find out a 1.16 objective. I mean, I don't see it as 0.05.
But if you go 2 pages later, you'll see it in 1.74, and so on. So I'm saying, put it right up front.
We can read through the formats.
And I would
That's fine.
old, new, big numbers. And then let's go to the specifics.
Mayor, Council, I really want to just bring it up because we want to get the extension. And what I'd like to recommend is that
The extension of the moratorium.
either contact Jim directly or me directly or email Jim with those comments, questions, and issues over this time, and we'll try to address them that way and get with the P&Z and the LPA, get them to see your positions, and that way we're not doing it right now. So my big thing is to get it extended.
So what we need to do tonight is get it extended. Right?
I like to make a motion to get it extended. Make a motion to extend the moratorium and bring back the ordinance for first reading on June 16th.
Yes. Second of that?
I did. Whatever you said, I think.
Okay. Seconded. Brian made a motion.
One last question.
Okay.
Mike, one last question. The FAR for the day properties at .074. Okay, now, hey, if we're going to cut it down to .05, have we got to worry about people coming on board and wanting to sue us because we allowed higher commercial?
No, we did day under the old rules.
Okay.
With the settlement.
Plus, the day property was very unique because it was between 2 county roads. So it really didn't apply.
Existing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I've got Lawrence Corning. Real quick, since we're just gonna delay on.
Lawrence, when you mentioned how important it was, and I know you don't really reach out to the residents and the voters on a lot of things, but I think this particular issue is extremely important for you to send out some kind of direct mail postcard.
Yeah.
And let them know the importance of what's going on and the dates. The dates at P and Z and the dates that'll be in front of you. The second point is FAR is kind of a hard thing to visualize. You know, if I recommend going to this form-based planning, period. But if you were to give them a visual of what this plan could look like, and there'd be a lot of permutations because it's kind of a first come, first serve on all the little different categories. Once you use up 0.05, it's gone. You never know where it's going to be. So if you ask someone to draw a picture to show people what Okeechobee could look like, well, you can't really do it exactly because you don't know which parcel is going to get which type of approval request. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. So it would be really helpful if you could get someone who could just do a rough sketch of what the view in the south would look like and the view in the north would look like. And they sort of roughly pick which uses go along the road. So they can visually see what you guys have got on your plate and what you're doing. And you can visually see what it is you're doing. And it would help us too.
Right. One of the things, just to go along with what you're saying, and I put a lot of emphasis on the FAR, because the bottom line is, and just so you visualize it, 5 acres is 220,000 square feet. If you go with a .05, that's 11,000 square feet that they could build. The bottom line is you got more trees, you got more grass, it looks more like Loxahatchee Grove with our house on the property. When you go to a .2, it looks like a town. When you look like a .1, it looks like a town. So my hope is by lowering the FAR, people are going to come along because what happens, they're taking the path of least resistance. Wow, I can build 30,000 square feet on this 10 acres, you know, and so I can get the Duncan and I can get this. And hopefully we get this down to where a person says, you know what, maybe it's better off leaving a house on the property, you know, and go that way. I mean, it's my
I absolutely agree with you, and if you could show that visually, because a lot of people have a hard time trying to visualize FARs.
Well, you know, and that's what, it's a straight percentage of square foot. So, I mean, that, it just is less use, but.
You already went through the settlement process, and you've been penciling it out for a long time, and others have, but again, to allow the greater, you know, majority of the people to actually get a feel for what you're doing.
All right.
And the Rural Vista Guidelines is improving, but it has an astronomically long way to go. And you know, I'm sorry, and I've mentioned this since the very beginning, the very first day. And you've done great work, but you really need a lot more because they're going to be using that. And it can really be, professionals can really bring you something more. And you could have a little contest. You could go around with your little cameras and take photographs of things that you like and send it in to the professional. But you really need to get something more because that's what they're going to be using. And you can tell what you got just south of the state college. I mean, they shocked the pants off us.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. All right, we have a motion in a second. Brother, you wanted to add something? Go.
Well, I was going to say is, it's very important that Jim and town get your feedback collectively and individually.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Jim to contact each of you over the next week or two, get your input. So if you have an opportunity to review, write, tear it up, please do, and Jim will be contacting each of you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
By the way, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Your example, I think, was a great example to even convey to people You say, all right, you have 5 acres. This is what this particular thing allows. Look at it as 3 or 4 homes that you have. If you have a home that's 3,000, whatever. And that can put it in perspective. But at the same time, we're talking about this is a pool. And somebody puts up 1, then you get, let's say, half left or whatever it might be. So I think I understand we're trying to convey some images, but again, we're not, I think we kind of resisted going down the path of a fancy, extensive picture of what our children might work and look at. You can't. I think you can give them some sense of size, but it's really hard to do the rest, and I don't think the expense is.
I think the key is going to be limiting square footage. So the more, and I'm really not for the first 4 are allowed to develop and the rest aren't. I think this applies to every property basically on Okeechobee that is of the right size that could do something. And it allows them that use, because every workshop and every charrette we had on Okeechobee, if y'all remember, and we had a bunch of them, the people that lived on Okeechobee wanted to be able to build anything. And everybody else in Loxahatchee Grove says, no, we don't want anything on Okeechobee. So somehow you've got to protect their rights at the same time to protect the town and what we live in. So that's where we're trying to get. So anyway, okay. We have a motion, a second for the moratorium. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion to add the ordinance.
On June 16th.
Yes. Okay. Moving to Vice Mayor's Ron's grant application for trail.
Grant, I've spoke to Bill about the grant application. Basically, we can't start proceeding with that until we get the maintenance survey maps done. But Bill seems to know what needs to be done. Plus, it was the management team that came up with the first grant that was turned down by the state. So I'm thinking as soon as we can get rolling on that, I'd like to just have a consensus that as soon as Bill can get rolling on it in the proper procedure, that we start working on the grant again. I know the deadline last year to turn it in was sometime in March. I believe the way the state works is that if we have that grant ready, we can turn it in, and it'll be waiting for them to approve it, whenever it's convenient for them or when the time is there. So I would definitely like to see the Red Tag Committee, they're still out of service right now, right, the Red Tag Committee?
I can bring it back at any time.
I'd like to see the Red Tag Committee put back in service, and with the manager's direction that we start working on this grant again and try and finish it up.
As I recall, we had, when we went through that process, it was pretty much done by somebody that's expert in that arena. And they put something together, and then I think maybe the committee could take a look at it. But if you put 5 people in the room with an expert, I'm not sure you're going to get the results that you want to start with. And you say that we have to submit it by March?
Different deadlines. I've seen those go in after deadlines,
Okay.
and some grants fall through and they say, oh, look, here's one, we can give it to this one.
All right, but we don't expect them to submit anything until next year.
Correct. They'll be bringing a work authorization back to the council.
I guess I would like to see you put it somewhere on your management report to say when we're going to get to it, because I think there's a lot of other things that we also have on there that you're not getting to for good reason, and I think we need to prioritize that again. But I'm not interested in putting everything else behind the grant process if we got to make a deadline in March of 2016.
Okay.
The other thing is, we talked about the interlocal agreement, Water Control District approved it, so I'd like to make a motion that, Mike, did we bring the documents or?
Well, the document was in the workshop. That was the document you discussed. It was part of that agenda, and this is the action item for that workshop. If the council's comfortable, which it seemed you were in a workshop, to approve the document in the workshop agenda, that would be your motion.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the document that was in the workshop agenda.
I second that. Oh.
Okay. Ron makes a motion, Jim seconds it. More discussion on it? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Moving to, did you want a motion on the grant regarding the trail? Because we didn't get a consensus on a motion.
Can I just entertain one more thing about the grant? Just nod your head. Did the Red Tag Committee participate in the grant that was filed to the state at all? Okay, well, they did, and what I'm saying is we've got the grant. In other words, Bill will know when we can put this into motion, but we don't need to wait till next year, okay? He needs to bring it back to, I believe that the management company paid for that grant last year, and it was a few $1,000s. Now, I compliment them for that. I don't think they should have paid for it. I think this town can afford to get started on the new grant. We believe that we've got what we need to get that grant to the state. So let's just let the Red Tag Committee, town management start working on the grant, because we've got the old grant that we can refer to, so that we can get some money from the state as soon as possible, and hopefully it would be before 2016. And Bill knows all about grants, the professional they used. I don't know who he would want to bring on board, but it's going to cost, so he needs to come back to us. And we've set aside money for the equestrian trails and stuff, recreational trails. So let's start spending some of this money as soon as Bill feels like it's feasible to work towards getting a grant. Do I need to make a motion, or can we go with a consensus?
You'll be making a motion when I bring the work authorization back, sir.
Okay. All right.
And on the subject of getting going on the trails, in November, it was approved that George Perez should open up the 6th Court North Trail from D Road to C Road. I would like to see that be the first one surveyed, if it hasn't been chosen as that, and that they get on it before we hear that somehow that got to be too old and we got to start all over from scratch again.
I've actually had that discussion with the administrator, and he's aware that that is priority, and I think that is the intent, is that they'll start on 6th Court North.
Good deal. All right, moving to public comments. Laura, come on up. Laura Danowski.
Laura Danowski, E Road. I promise I will be brief. I just wanted to do this in public area that yes, I am running for the upcoming seat on the Water Control District. And it comes from my desire to share my professional experience in water systems controls, restoring eroded lake banks, algae management, and multi-million-dollar budget stewardship. I look forward to sharing this with the town, and that is my clear intent. I look forward to May the 28th, and whatever shall be, shall be. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Moving to town attorney, Mike.
Go Gators.
Okay. Council members, Jim.
Thank everybody for staying, and those that stayed, and of course, you can tell those that were here that I also appreciate their attendance before they left.
Okay, Ryan.
I think we had a pretty productive night. I think the workshop went really well. I'm happy we cleared the air on a lot of stuff. And also we got the agreement worked out. And thanks for coming, and see you in a few weeks.
Okay. Ron.
Go Gators, be safe going home.
Okay. Tom.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming. I'll see if I can leave it relative to the trail.
Okay, and thank those of you that mattered, that stuck around the whole time. I think we have a good meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Why?
In other words,